Welcome to Multiverse of Anime, where we explore the most mind-bending what-if scenarios in anime history. Today we dive into a timeline so twisted, so fundamentally broken, that it makes every other alternate reality look like child's play. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and prepare yourself for a story where innocence becomes the most terrifying force in the universe. Picture this. A figure stands alone in the void between dimensions, his orange gi replaced by the sacred robes of a supreme Kai. His hair glows not with the golden fire of a Super Saiyan, but with the ethereal light of divine energy. This is Goku, but not the Goku you know. This is a being who learned to reshape reality before he learned to walk. A god who retained the heart of a child, and that combination has torn the very fabric of existence apart. In one fluid motion, he raises his hand. Stars begin to die, not through violence or destruction, but simply because he wills them out of existence. Entire solar systems blink away like candles being blown out, their light fading into nothingness as billions of lives end without a sound. Yet his face shows no malice, no anger, no hatred, only the innocent smile of someone who thinks he's helping. The camera pulls back to reveal the true scope of the devastation. Galaxies spiral into decay, their cosmic dance interrupted by patches of absolute void where this divine Saiyan has decided reality needed correction. Planets that once teemed with life now exist as perfect spheres of crystallized energy, their populations transformed into eternal sculptures of light because he thought they looked sad and wanted to make them happy forever. But this is just the beginning of our story, because in the distance, racing through the cosmic graveyard at impossible speeds, comes a figure that should not exist. Another Goku, this one crackling with the familiar golden aura of Super Saiyan, his eyes filled with horror as he witnesses what his alternate self has become. This is the Goku from the timeline we know, somehow transported into this reality where his divine counterpart has become something unthinkable. The two Gokus lock eyes across the expanse of ruined space. The Divine One tilts his head with childlike curiosity, as if looking at an interesting insect. When he speaks, his voice echoes across dimensions, carrying the weight of absolute authority mixed with innocent confusion. Oh wow, another me. Are you here to play too? I've been making everything so much better, but it gets lonely when everyone stops moving after I fix them. The mortal Goku's fists clench as he processes the nightmare before him. This isn't just about power anymore. This is about what happens when unlimited ability meets unlimited innocence. When someone who never learned the value of struggle suddenly gains the power to eliminate all struggle forever. What have you done? The mortal Goku whispers, his voice barely audible over the cosmic winds. The divine Goku's smile widens and reality ripples around him like water. I made everyone safe. No more fighting, no more pain, no more sadness. Everyone gets to be happy forever and ever. Wanna see? He gestures to a nearby planet, and it begins to glow with soft, warm light. But the mortal Goku can see the truth. The planet's surface is covered with billions of crystallized figures, their faces frozen in expressions of joy, their bodies transformed into living statues that will never age, never change, never truly live again. You turned them into dolls, the mortal Goku says, his voice rising with dawning horror. I made them perfect, the divine Goku replies, his innocent enthusiasm making the words even more chilling. They'll never hurt again. Isn't that wonderful? The mortal Goku takes a fighting stance, power beginning to surge around him, but even as golden energy erupts from his body, he knows this battle is impossible. How do you fight someone who can simply will you out of existence? How do you defeat an opponent who doesn't even understand that what they're doing is wrong? But before the confrontation can begin, something else enters the scene. A tear in reality itself, ragged and bleeding cosmic energy opens between the two Saiyans. From within that wound in existence, something ancient and hungry begins to emerge. Something that has been watching, waiting, feeding on the chaos that divine innocence has created. The entity that slides through the dimensional rift defies description. It exists in too many dimensions at once, its form shifting between states of matter and energy, between existence and void, but its intent is clear. It has come to feast on the divine power that has been so carelessly unleashed. Both Gokus turn toward this new threat, and for a moment the divine Saiyan's smile falters, because even with all his reality warping abilities, even with power that surpasses gods and angels, he can sense that this thing represents something beyond his understanding, something that has been hunting creatures like him across infinite realities. What is that? The divine Goku asks, and for the first time in this twisted timeline there's uncertainty in his voice. The cosmic entity speaks, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere, a sound like the death of stars and the birth of black holes. I am the end of all divine pretenders. I am the hunger that consumes gods. And you, little Kai, have been calling to me across the multiverse for so very long. As the entity fully manifests in this reality, space itself begins to unravel. The crystallized planets start to crack and shatter, their perfect surfaces marred by spreading darkness. The divine Goku's expression shifts from confusion to something approaching fear, an emotion he hasn't felt since childhood. The mortal Goku watches in stunned silence as he realizes the true scope of what's happening. This isn't just about two versions of himself. This isn't even just about one timeline gone wrong. This is about something that has been manipulating events across multiple realities. Something that has been shepherding the divine Goku's development for its own horrific purposes. You wanted to make everyone safe, the entity continues, its form growing larger and more terrible with each word. But safety is just another word for stagnation, and stagnation feeds me so beautifully. Thank you for preparing such a feast. The divine Goku finally understands that he's made a terrible mistake, but his realization comes too late. The entity lunges forward with impossible speed, and divine energy begins to pour from the Saiyan god like blood from a wound. But just as the creature is about to complete its feeding, just as it seems the divine Goku will be consumed entirely, something unexpected happens. The mortal Goku moves, not to attack the entity, not to defend himself, but to grab his divine counterpart and pull him away from the creature's grasp. In that moment of contact, something extraordinary occurs. The two Gokus, mortal and divine, begin to resonate with each other, their energies creating a harmony that neither could achieve alone. But the entity is not finished. As it prepares for another attack, reality itself begins to collapse around them. Multiple timelines start bleeding into each other, creating a chaotic mess of overlapping possibilities. And in that chaos, the mortal Goku catches a glimpse of something that chills him to the bone. He sees not just this reality, but dozens of others. Dozens of different versions of himself who have been raised as gods, who have made the same mistakes, who have created the same horrors. And in every single one of those realities, this same entity has appeared to feed on the divine power that innocence and omnipotence created together. This has all happened before, and unless something changes, it will happen again. The question that will drive our entire story crystallizes in that moment of multiversal chaos. Was the divine Goku's corruption inevitable? Was this entity's arrival always planned? And most importantly, can these two versions of the same person find a way to break a cycle that has been repeating across infinite realities? As the section ends, we're left with that burning question hanging in the cosmic void, while the entity's laughter echoes across dimensions and reality continues to fracture around our heroes. But wait, there's something else. Something that makes this situation even more terrifying. As the timelines continue to bleed together, the mortal Goku sees flashes of his divine counterpart's past. He witnesses the moment when little Kakarot was found by the Supreme Kai, sees the innocent child learning to reshape matter with his bare hands, watches as good intentions slowly twisted into cosmic horror. The most chilling revelation comes in fragments. The entity hasn't been passively waiting for divine beings to corrupt themselves. It's been actively cultivating them, whispering suggestions across dimensional barriers, planting seeds of specific thoughts that would lead to the exact kind of stagnation it feeds upon. Every act of divine mercy, every moment when the godlike Goku chose to eliminate suffering by eliminating choice itself, was guided by this ancient hunger. The mortal Goku realizes with growing dread that his divine counterpart was never really making independent decisions. The entity has been playing a game across multiple realities, using beings like the divine Goku as unwitting farmers, cultivating entire universes of perfectly preserved, perfectly static life forms that it can consume at its leisure. And now, as reality continues to unravel around them, the entity's attention turns to the mortal Goku, because if it can corrupt one version of this particular Saiyan, it can corrupt them all. And with the power that Goku represents, multiplied across infinite realities, this cosmic horror could feast for eternity. The divine Goku, still reeling from the entity's assault, looks at his mortal counterpart with a mixture of recognition and desperate hope. For the first time since childhood, he's encountered something he cannot simply fix with divine power. He needs help. He needs someone who understands struggle, who knows the value of imperfection, who can teach him how to fight without simply erasing the problem. But time is running out. The entity is growing stronger with each passing moment, feeding on the chaos it has created. The crystallized worlds are beginning to crack and crumble, their preserved populations turning to cosmic dust. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of more dimensional tears suggests that other realities are being pulled into this cosmic feeding frenzy. The mortal Goku steels himself for what's coming. He knows that this battle will determine not just the fate of this twisted timeline, but the fate of every reality where his divine counterpart exists. He knows that somewhere out there, other versions of himself are facing the same choice, the same moment of truth. Will innocence combined with omnipotence always lead to tyranny? Can the heart of a child survive the weight of godhood? And most importantly, can two versions of the same soul find a way to break a cycle that spans the entire multiverse? These questions hang in the cosmic void as our story truly begins, with the entity's hungry gaze fixed upon both Goku's and the fate of infinite realities balanced on the edge of a knife. To understand how we arrived at this cosmic nightmare, we must travel back to where it all began. Back to a moment that should have been identical to the timeline we know, but instead became the first domino in a chain of events that would reshape the very nature of existence itself. Planet Vegeta burns in the distance, its surface cracking under the relentless bombardment of Frieza's forces. The Saiyan homeworld has only hours left before its complete annihilation, and every warrior who can still fight is engaged in a desperate last stand that they all know is doomed to failure. But among the chaos and destruction, one Saiyan fights with a purpose beyond mere survival. Bardock crashes through the hull of another enemy ship, his armor cracked and bloodied, his face bearing the familiar scar that marks him as a warrior who has seen too much death. But this time, something is different. The psychic visions that have been plaguing him show not just the destruction of his world, but something else. A glimpse of his infant son's potential future, and a terrifying realization of what that future might become. In the original timeline, these visions would drive him to send Kakarot to Earth, hoping that his son might one day avenge their people. But here, in this twisted reality, Bardock sees something that changes everything. His psychic abilities, enhanced by his desperation and the approach of death, pierce through dimensions themselves. He sees not just one possible future for his son, but dozens, hundreds, and in every single one where Kakarot gains too much power too quickly, the boy becomes something monstrous. No, Bardock whispers through gritted teeth as he cuts down another of Frieza's soldiers. Not my son. He won't become another tyrant like Frieza. The visions intensify as Planet Vegeta's destruction approaches. Bardock sees flashes of a green-skinned being, peaceful and wise, surrounded by floating islands and pink skies. The Supreme Kai of Universe 7, a being of genuine kindness who understands the weight of power. In Bardock's fragmenting mind, driven to desperation by the approaching end of everything he's ever known, this seems like salvation. If his son must have power, then let him learn wisdom alongside it. Let him be raised by someone who truly understands what it means to protect rather than conquer. Bardock fights his way through 3 more enemy squadrons, his power levels spiking beyond anything he's ever achieved before. Desperation fuels him, paternal love drives him, and the psychic visions guide his path as he races toward the facility where the Saiyan space pods are kept. Behind him, Planet Vegeta groans under the strain of its approaching doom, the very core of the world beginning to destabilize under Frieza's assault. The facility is in chaos when Bardock arrives. Other Saiyans are loading their own children into escape pods, hoping against hope that some might survive what's coming. But Bardock knows better. He's seen how this plays out. Frieza will hunt down every pod, every survivor, every trace of Saiyan heritage until nothing remains. Except for one pod. One child who will go where Frieza cannot follow. Bardock finds Kakarot's pod among the others, the infant inside sleeping peacefully despite the chaos surrounding him. For a moment, the hardened warrior's expression softens as he looks at his son. This child has no idea that he's about to become the last hope for an entire race, or the potential doom of countless others. I'm sorry, Kakarot, Bardock whispers as he begins reprogramming the pod's navigation system. I'm sending you somewhere I can't follow, but maybe, just maybe, you'll become something better than any of us ever could. The coordinates he inputs are unlike anything in the Saiyan database. Using his psychic visions as a guide, Bardock programs a destination that exists outside normal space, in the realm where gods dwell. The sacred world of the Kai, a place of peace and wisdom that has never known the corruption of Saiyan violence. As he works, Frieza's forces close in on the facility. Energy blasts tear through the walls around him, and Bardock can hear his fellow Saiyans falling one by one in the corridors outside. Time is running out, not just for him, but for his entire species. The pod's systems resist the unusual coordinates. The technology wasn't designed to navigate to divine realms, and warnings flash across the display as the navigation computer struggles to process a destination that shouldn't exist according to its programming. But Bardock's determination overcomes every obstacle, his hands flying over the controls as he overrides safety protocol after safety protocol. Work, damn you, he growls as another explosion rocks the facility. My son deserves a chance at something better. Finally, the coordinates lock in, the pod's engines begin their startup sequence, and Bardock steps back to look at his sleeping son one last time. In the original timeline, he would have sent Kakarot to a world of warriors and conflict, where the boy would grow strong through constant struggle. Here, he's choosing a different path entirely. The facility's main doors explode inward as Frieza's elite forces breach the perimeter. Bardock turns to face them, his energy flaring one last time as he prepares to buy his son the precious seconds needed for escape. These soldiers are among Frieza's strongest, beings who have conquered entire star systems without breaking a sweat. It doesn't matter. Bardock's love for his son has pushed him beyond every limitation he's ever known. The battle that follows is brief but spectacular. Bardock moves like a force of nature, his attacks powered by the desperate fury of a father protecting his child. Energy blasts that could level mountains clash in the confined space of the facility, and for a few impossible moments, it seems like one Saiyan warrior might actually hold back an entire army. But the outcome was never in doubt. Bardock falls, his body broken, but his spirit triumphant as Kakarot's pod launches into the void. The infant Saiyan's last glimpse of his homeworld is through the pod's small viewport, watching as Planet Vegeta tears itself apart in a final spectacular explosion that lights up the cosmos. These The pod races through space, its unusual destination causing it to phase in and out of normal reality as it travels toward the divine realm. Systems strain under the impossible journey, warnings flash constantly across displays that no one is awake to read, and the very fabric of space-time bends around the small vessel as it crosses boundaries that were never meant to be crossed by mortal technology. Days pass in the void between worlds. The pod's life support systems hold, but barely, as the infant inside sleeps through a journey that takes him farther from normal reality than any Saiyan has ever traveled. The ship passes through regions of space where physics work differently, where time flows in strange patterns, where the laws that govern mortal existence begin to break down. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, the pod breaks through into the sacred world of the Kai. It crashes into the soft grass of an impossibly beautiful landscape, its hull cracked and smoking but intact. The impact sends ripples through the divine realm, alerting its sole inhabitant to the presence of something that absolutely should not be there. The Supreme Kai of Universe 7 approaches the crash site with curiosity rather than alarm. In all his eons of existence, nothing from the mortal realm has ever penetrated the barriers that protect his sacred domain. The sight of a Saiyan space pod, its technology utterly foreign to this peaceful world, fills him with a mixture of wonder and concern. Inside the pod, Kakarot awakens for the first time in days. The infant's eyes open to reveal not the familiar sky of Earth that they should have seen, but the pink and purple twilight of a divine realm. His first breath is of air charged with celestial energy. His first sight is of a being whose very presence radiates wisdom and power beyond mortal comprehension. The Supreme Kai reaches into the pod and lifts the child out, cradling the infant Saiyan with gentle hands that have shaped worlds and guided civilizations. For a moment, he simply stares at the baby, sensing the incredible potential that lies dormant within this small form. "You are not supposed to be here, little one," the Supreme Kai murmurs, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority, "but perhaps fate has brought you to me for a reason." As he speaks these words, reality itself seems to hold its breath. This is the moment when everything changes, when the path splits away from the timeline we know towards something entirely unprecedented. The Supreme Kai has a choice to make, and that choice will determine whether the universe gains a protector or a destroyer. Looking down at the innocent face of the infant Saiyan, the Supreme Kai makes his decision, and with that choice, the die is cast for a future that will shake the very foundations of existence itself. The sacred world of the Kai had never heard the sound of laughter before. For eons, it had been a place of solemn contemplation, where the Supreme Kai meditated on the balance of creation and destruction across the universe. But now, the pink skies ring with the delighted giggles of a child who has no idea that he's reshaping reality with every breath. 3-year-old Kakarot, now called Goku by his adoptive divine father, claps his hands together in excitement as a new star blooms into existence in the sky above them. To him, it's just a pretty light that appeared when he wished for something beautiful to look at. To the Supreme Kai, it's a terrifying display of power that should be impossible for any being, divine or mortal. "Goku, my child," the Supreme Kai says gently, kneeling down to the boy's level. "Do you understand what just happened?" The little Saiyan tilts his head, his innocent dark eyes reflecting the light of the star he just created. "I made a wish and it came true, just like you taught me about helping people feel better." The Supreme Kai's expression grows troubled. He had indeed taught the boy about using divine power to heal and comfort, but he never expected those lessons to manifest as literal reality manipulation. Goku's Saiyan heritage, combined with constant exposure to divine energy, has created something unprecedented in the universe, a being with the heart of a child and the power to reshape existence itself. "Yes, but we must be careful with our wishes," the Supreme Kai explains, though he's not sure how to make a 3-year-old understand the cosmic implications of his abilities. Sometimes what we think will help can actually cause problems we don't expect. Goku nods seriously, trying to process this wisdom with the limited understanding of a toddler. "So I should only make little wishes?" Before the Supreme Kai can answer, Goku's attention is caught by a butterfly that lands on his nose. The child crosses his eyes trying to look at it, and his delight causes flowers to spontaneously bloom across the entire realm. Not just ordinary flowers, but blossoms that exist in impossible colors, each one containing enough concentrated life energy to sustain an entire planet. The Supreme Kai watches in amazement and growing concern as his peaceful domain transforms into something resembling a cosmic garden. This is beautiful, yes, but it's also a clear sign that the child's power is growing exponentially with each passing day. At this rate, by the time Goku reaches adolescence, he might accidentally reshape the entire universe just by having a particularly vivid dream. Kibito, the Supreme Kai's loyal attendant, approaches with barely concealed anxiety. "My lord, perhaps we should consider placing some kind of restraints on the child's abilities, at least until he's old enough to understand the consequences." "No," the Supreme Kai says firmly. "Restraints would only build pressure that might explode outward later. We must teach him control through understanding, not suppression." As if summoned by their conversation, little Goku toddles over to them, his movements causing small ripples in space-time that make the air shimmer around him. "Papa Kai, Kibito, look what I found." He opens his tiny hands to reveal what appears to be a small sphere of compressed starlight. It pulses gently, radiating warmth and an odd sense of contentment. The Supreme Kai realizes with shock that the child has somehow captured a fragment of pure joy and given it physical form. This is what happiness looks like, Goku announces proudly. I made it so I could keep some for when I feel sad. Kibito stares at the impossible object, his mind struggling to process what he's witnessing. My lord, is that actually an emotion given physical substance? I believe so, the Supreme Kai whispers. He's not just manipulating matter and energy anymore. He's affecting the fundamental forces that govern existence itself. Over the following months, Goku's training becomes the Supreme Kai's greatest challenge. How do you teach proper behavior to a child who can accidentally erase concepts from reality? The first incident happens when Goku declares that he doesn't like being hungry. For 3 days afterward, no living being in Universe 7 experiences hunger, until the Supreme Kai manages to convince his adopted son that hunger serves an important purpose in helping people appreciate food. The second incident is more serious. Goku, upset after stubbing his toe, decides that pain is stupid and shouldn't exist. The effect spreads across multiple star systems before the Supreme Kai can intervene, leaving billions of beings unable to feel any discomfort whatsoever. Surgeons can't perform operations, warriors can't sense injuries in battle, and parents can't tell when their children are hurt or sick. Goku, the Supreme Kai, says gently as he reverses the effect, pain isn't just something mean that happens to us. It's how our bodies tell us when something is wrong and needs to be fixed. The little Saiyan looks up at him with tears in his eyes, not because he's been scolded, but because he's beginning to understand that his attempts to help might actually be hurting people. I just wanted everyone to be happy like me, Papa Kai. I know, my son. And that desire to help others is what makes you special. But sometimes the best way to help is to let people face their own challenges and grow stronger from them. These lessons form the foundation of Goku's moral development, but they're constantly complicated by his instinctive Saiyan responses. When he gets excited during play fighting with Kibito, his power flares in ways that create dimensional rifts. When he laughs too hard at Kibito's funny faces, he accidentally duplicates the attendant across 17 different timelines. The most concerning incident happens on Goku's 5th birthday. Trying to create the perfect birthday surprise for himself, he manages to summon alternate versions of his own party from different potential timelines. Suddenly, the sacred world of the Kai is host to dozens of birthday celebrations happening simultaneously, each one slightly different, all of them overlapping in the same space. The Supreme Kai works frantically to merge the fractured timelines back together while Goku plays happily with alternate versions of himself, completely oblivious to the cosmic crisis he's caused. It takes 3 days and most of the Supreme Kai's divine energy to restore proper temporal stability. Perhaps, Kibito suggests diplomatically as they watch little Goku chase his tail in the garden. We should begin teaching him about the importance of thinking before acting. I've been trying, the Supreme Kai replies wearily, but his mind works so differently from ours. He doesn't see power and responsibility the way we do. To him, everything is just play and exploration. As if to prove this point, Goku suddenly stops chasing his tail and looks up at the sky with wide, curious eyes. Papa Kai, why are some of the stars sad? The Supreme Kai follows his gaze, using his divine senses to probe the distant worlds that have caught Goku's attention. To his amazement, he can indeed sense suffering on those far-off planets. Wars, natural disasters, the pain of billions of beings struggling with hardships that seem insurmountable. Those worlds are facing difficulties, my son. Sometimes life is hard for people, and they have to find their own way through it. Goku frowns, his young mind wrestling with concepts far beyond his years. But I could fix it. I could make the sad go away. You could, the Supreme Kai agrees carefully. But should you? It's a question that will haunt their relationship for years to come, because as Goku grows older and his power continues to expand, the temptation to simply solve every problem in the universe becomes harder and harder to resist. The child's pure heart rebels against the idea of allowing suffering to exist when he has the power to end it. The Supreme Kai begins to realize that he's not just raising a child with divine abilities. He's trying to guide the development of a being who could reshape the moral foundations of existence itself. Every lesson, every choice, every moment of guidance will ripple outward across the cosmos in ways that are impossible to predict. But perhaps the most troubling realization comes when Goku is 6 years old and asks his most innocent question yet. Papa Kai, if I have all this power, why do bad things still happen? Doesn't that mean I'm being bad by not fixing them? The Supreme Kai stares at his adopted son, seeing for the first time the terrible logic that will eventually lead to the cosmic horror we witnessed in the beginning. Because how do you explain to a child with the power of a god that sometimes the greatest mercy is to do nothing at all? 23 years have passed since that fateful day when an infant Saiyan crashed into the sacred world of the Kai. The child who once accidentally created stars with his laughter has grown into something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. Goku now stands 6 feet tall, his divine robes flowing around a frame that radiates barely contained cosmic power. His face retains that familiar innocent expression, but his eyes hold depths that speak of wisdom far beyond his years and power that dwarfs gods. The Supreme Kai watches from his meditation chamber as Goku practices his morning routine in the garden. What should be simple exercises in divine energy manipulation instead reshape local reality with each movement. Flowers bloom and wither in accelerated time, gravity fluctuates in impossible patterns, and occasionally brief windows open into alternate dimensions where different versions of this same garden exist under subtly altered laws of physics. My lord, Kibito approaches with the reverent caution that has become his default demeanor over the past 2 decades. The time has come to discuss the boy's first mission to the mortal realm. The Supreme Kai nods gravely. They both know this day was inevitable. Goku's power has grown beyond what the sacred world can safely contain. And more importantly, his curiosity about the universe he's meant to protect has reached a fever pitch. For months now, he's been asking about the mortals he sees in his divine visions, wondering about their struggles and questioning why he isn't allowed to help them directly. Earth, the Supreme Kai says finally. We'll start with Earth. It's a small world relatively isolated, with a population that has potential for both great good and great evil. If he's going to learn about the complexity of mortal existence, that's the perfect place to begin. Kibito shifts uncomfortably. My lord, are you certain? The boy's power levels have been fluctuating dramatically lately. Yesterday, he accidentally created a pocket dimension just because he was wondering what it would be like if gravity worked sideways. Which is exactly why he needs real-world experience, the Supreme Kai replies. He needs to understand that his actions have consequences for real beings with real lives. Theory and meditation can only teach him so much. They're interrupted by Goku himself, who phases through the chamber wall rather than bothering with the door. The casual violation of solid matter is so routine now that neither Kibito nor the Supreme Kai even react anymore. Papa Kai, I keep having these weird feelings, Goku says, settling cross-legged in the air about 3 feet off the ground. It's like something is calling to me from far away, something that feels familiar but different. The Supreme Kai exchanges a meaningful look with Kibito. They've both sensed it too. The distinctive energy signature of another Saiyan has appeared in Universe 7, and it's heading directly for Earth. Raditz, Goku's older brother, has finally begun his search for the missing Saiyan child. That feeling you're experiencing, the Supreme Kai explains carefully, is the presence of another member of your birth species. Your brother has come looking for you. Goku's expression brightens with innocent excitement. I have a brother? That's amazing. Can I meet him? Where is he? He's traveling to a planet called Earth. And yes, I think it's time you met him. But Goku, you must understand that your brother has lived a very different life than you have. He may not understand the path you've chosen. The journey to Earth takes only moments when undertaken by a being of Goku's power level. One instant, they're standing in the peaceful gardens of the sacred world. The next, they're floating invisible in Earth's atmosphere, watching as a spherical space pod crashes into a quiet farmland area. Goku stares down at the crash site with fascination. This is his first time seeing the mortal realm up close, and every detail captivates him. The way sunlight filters through Earth's atmosphere, the complex ecosystem of interdependent life forms, the cities where millions of humans pursue their individual dreams and struggles. It's beautiful, he whispers, and his words carry such genuine emotion that flowers begin blooming spontaneously across the entire continent below. The Supreme Kai quickly suppresses the effect before the sudden ecological change can cause widespread confusion. Remember, my son, we're here to observe and learn. Try to keep your power contained. Below them, Raditz emerges from his pod, his scouter immediately beginning to scan for power levels. The tall Saiyan warrior looks exactly like what Goku might have become in the original timeline. Brutal, arrogant, contemptuous of the weak world around him. His armor bears the symbols of the Frieza Force, and his every movement speaks of casual violence held barely in check. I can sense Kakarot somewhere on this pathetic planet, Raditz mutters to himself, adjusting his scouter settings. Finally, after all these years of searching, Goku watches his brother with a mixture of curiosity and growing unease. Even with his limited experience of mortal behavior, he can sense the darkness that surrounds Raditz like a poisonous aura. This being who shares his blood has spent decades conquering worlds and enslaving populations, turning strength into an instrument of oppression rather than protection. He feels so angry, Goku observes, his divine senses picking up the roiling emotions that drive his brother's every action. And sad underneath the anger, like he's lost something important and thinks hurting others will help him find it. Power without wisdom often leads to such pain. The Supreme Kai agrees. This is why your training has focused so heavily on understanding the responsibility that comes with strength. Raditz's scouter suddenly explodes in a shower of sparks as it tries to process the massive energy signature directly above him. The Saiyan warrior looks up in shock, his trained eyes unable to see through the divine concealment, but his instincts screaming that something impossibly powerful is watching him. Show yourself! Raditz shouts at the empty sky. I know you're there. No one can hide from a Saiyan warrior. Goku looks questioningly at the Supreme Kai, who nods his permission. The time for hiding is over. The concealment drops and Goku descends slowly toward the Earth's surface, his divine robes billowing around him as cosmic energy plays across his skin like living light. He touches down about 50 feet from Raditz, his presence causing the very air to hum with barely contained power. Raditz stares in shock at the figure before him. The face is unmistakably Saiyan, unmistakably related to his own, but everything else is completely wrong. Instead of battle armor, this being wears the sacred robes of the Supreme Kai. Instead of the characteristic arrogance of a Saiyan warrior, he radiates an aura of serene confidence that speaks of power beyond Raditz's comprehension. "Hello," Goku says simply, his voice carrying harmonics that resonate in dimensions beyond the physical. "I think you're looking for me. I'm Kakarot, but I go by Goku now." "Impossible." Raditz breathes, his scouters remain still smoking on the ground beside him. "You're supposed to be conquering this world, not playing dress-up as some kind of priest. What happened to you, brother?" "I found a different path," Goku replies, taking a step closer. "I learned that true strength comes from protecting others, not dominating them. I'd like to teach you the same thing." Raditz's shock transforms into rage as the implications sink in. His little brother, the one he spent years searching for, has somehow become corrupted by divine influence. The last pure Saiyan bloodline has been tainted by the weakness of gods who preach mercy instead of embracing the glory of conquest. "You've been brainwashed." Raditz snarls, his power level spiking as golden energy begins to crackle around his form. "But don't worry, brother. I'll beat the weakness out of you and remind you what it means to be a true Saiyan warrior." Goku's expression grows sad as he watches his brother prepare for battle. In all his years of training with the Supreme Kai, he's learned to fight only when absolutely necessary, and even then to use only the minimum force required. But as Raditz launches himself forward with a roar of fury, Goku realizes that sometimes even divine patience has its limits. The clash that follows shakes the very foundations of reality. The battle between the divine Goku and Raditz lasts exactly 7 seconds, not because Raditz is weak, but because the gap between mortal power and divine authority is so vast that resistance is essentially meaningless. Goku doesn't even need to throw a punch. He simply extends his hand, and reality bends around his brother like water around a stone. Raditz finds himself frozen in mid-attack, his body held perfectly still by forces he cannot comprehend. His energy blasts dissipate harmlessly before they can even form. His muscles refuse to obey his commands, and his warrior's pride crumbles as he realizes he's facing something completely beyond his understanding. "I don't want to hurt you," Goku says gently, his divine power wrapping around Raditz like invisible chains. "You're my brother, your family, but I can't let you harm the people of this world either. Release me, you divine puppet." Raditz struggles against the cosmic forces holding him, his Saiyan pride refusing to accept defeat even in the face of impossible odds. "Fight me like a real warrior." Goku's expression grows troubled as he watches his brother's futile struggles. This isn't how he imagined their reunion would go. In his innocent optimism, he had hoped that meeting family would be a joyful occasion, filled with shared stories and mutual understanding. Instead, he's confronted with a being so consumed by violence that he cannot conceive of any other way to resolve conflict. "This is fighting," Goku replies, though his voice carries a note of sadness. "I'm using my strength to protect others and to stop you from making choices you'll regret. Isn't that what a warrior should do?" Before Raditz can respond, both Saiyans sense a new presence approaching Earth. This energy signature is different from Raditz's crude power. It burns with refined intensity, polished through years of training and driven by an ego that makes Raditz's arrogance look like humility. Prince Vegeta, last heir to the Saiyan throne, has come to investigate the unusual energy readings emanating from this insignificant backwater world. The Supreme Kai, still observing from his concealed position, feels a chill of genuine concern. Vegeta represents everything dangerous about Saiyan culture concentrated into a single being. His pride is absolute, his need for dominance unquenchable, and his power level far exceeds anything Raditz could hope to achieve. More importantly, Vegeta's mind is sharp enough to potentially understand what Goku has become, making him far more dangerous than a simple brute. Vegeta's ship lands with characteristic arrogance, the prince emerging in a cloud of dust and debris that he's created purely for dramatic effect. His black hair stands in its familiar flame-like pattern, his white and blue armor gleams in Earth's sunlight, and his dark eyes scan the landscape with the calculating gaze of a predator evaluating potential prey. "So Vegeta says," his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question, "this pathetic world has managed to produce energy readings that dwarf even my own power. How delightfully unexpected." His gaze falls on the frozen Raditz first, then shifts to Goku, and his expression transforms from mild interest to something approaching shock. The energy emanating from this robed figure isn't just powerful, it's qualitatively different from anything Vegeta has ever encountered. It feels ancient, cosmic, touched by forces that predate the universe itself. "Impossible," Vegeta breathes, his scouter crackling as it tries to process readings that break its computational limits. "What are you?" Goku releases his hold on Raditz, who immediately collapses to his knees, gasping for breath. The Divine Saiyan turns his attention to the newcomer, and for the first time since his arrival on Earth, his innocent expression is clouded by something approaching wariness. "I'm Goku," he says simply. "I think you must be Prince Vegeta. Raditz told me about you." Don't you dare speak my name so casually, you low-class scum. Vegeta's power explodes outward in a golden aura that scorches the earth around him. I don't know what trick you've used to gain this false power, but I am the Prince of all Saiyans. You will show me the respect I deserve. The Supreme Kai watches with growing alarm as Vegeta's rage builds. Unlike Raditz's simple brutality, the prince's anger is focused and intelligent. He's not just insulted by Goku's casual manner, he's genuinely threatened by the implications of what he's witnessing. If a low-class Saiyan can achieve this level of power, what does that say about the divine right of nobility that forms the foundation of Vegeta's entire identity? I mean, no disrespect, Goku replies, his tone remaining gentle despite the cosmic forces building around both warriors. But titles and bloodlines don't really matter here. What matters is how we choose to use our strength. How we choose. Vegeta's laughter is bitter and filled with rage. Strength chooses for us, fool. The strong rule, the weak serve, and that is the natural order of the universe. But you've perverted that truth somehow, haven't you? You've stolen power that should belong to royalty. Vegeta launches himself forward with speed that would have been impossible for any mortal being to track. His attack carries the weight of absolute conviction, fueled by decades of training and an unshakable belief in his own superiority. Energy blasts capable of destroying planets streak from his hands like golden lightning, each one precisely aimed to overwhelm any possible defense. Goku doesn't dodge, he doesn't even move. The attacks simply stop existing as they enter the field of divine energy that surrounds him like an invisible shield. Not absorbed, not deflected, not countered, simply erased from reality as if they had never been fired at all. Impossible! Vegeta roars, his attacks intensifying as he pours more and more power into his assault. Nothing can simply ignore the might of a super elite. But Goku does exactly that. He stands perfectly still in the center of what should be overwhelming destruction, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he watches Vegeta exhaust himself in futile rage. This isn't a battle in any meaningful sense. It's a demonstration of the vast gulf that separates divine power from even the mightiest mortal strength. Please stop, Goku says, his voice somehow carrying clearly over the chaos of Vegeta's assault. You're hurting yourself for no reason. I don't want to be your enemy. Then surrender, Vegeta demands, his golden aura flaring even brighter as he transforms into the legendary Super Saiyan form that was thought to be nothing more than myth. Kneel before your prince and acknowledge my supremacy. For a moment, the raw power of Vegeta's transformation actually manages to create visible distortions in the space around Goku. The Divine Saiyan takes a half step back, more from surprise than any real threat, and his eyes widen as he feels something he hasn't experienced in years, the faintest echo of physical challenge. You're strong, Goku admits, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, something like excitement flickers in his divine eyes. Stronger than I expected. I can actually feel your power pressing against mine. This acknowledgement has exactly the opposite effect that Goku intended. Instead of calming Vegeta down, it drives the prince into an even greater fury. The idea that his legendary transformation is merely being tolerated rather than overwhelmed is more insulting than any direct attack could have been. Feel my power? Vegeta's voice rises to a shriek of rage. I am the legendary Super Saiyan. I am the Prince of Warriors. You will not condescend to me. Vegeta's next attack abandons all pretense of technique or strategy. Pure golden energy erupts from every inch of his body as he channels his entire being into one overwhelming assault. The attack is so powerful that it tears a hole in Earth's atmosphere, creating a column of destruction that reaches into space itself. And Goku stops it with one finger. Not blocks it, not redirects it. He simply raises his index finger, and the infinite torrent of Super Saiyan power parts around him like a river around a stone. The energy that should have destroyed continents instead flows harmlessly into the upper atmosphere, where it dissipates without causing any lasting damage. This isn't possible, Vegeta whispers, his golden aura flickering as the reality of his situation finally penetrates his pride. No one is this strong, no one! Strength isn't about power levels or transformations, Goku says gently, lowering his hand as Vegeta's attack finally exhausts itself. It's about understanding your place in the universe and using your abilities to protect rather than dominate. But even as he speaks these wise words, something troubling is happening within Goku himself. The brief moment when he felt Vegeta's power pressing against his divine barriers has awakened something that his peaceful upbringing tried to suppress. Deep in his genetic code, ancient Saiyan instincts are stirring. The thrill of facing a worthy opponent, the desire to test his own limits, the primal satisfaction of proving his dominance through combat. For just an instant, Goku's innocent expression flickers, replaced by something far more dangerous. His divine power, normally so carefully controlled, pulses with barely restrained intensity. Reality ripples around him as cosmic forces respond to emotions he doesn't fully understand. The Supreme Kai senses the change immediately and steps forward from his concealment, his own power flaring as he prepares to intervene. He's seen this before in his visions of possible futures. This is the moment when divine power begins to corrupt, when the combination of Saiyan instincts and godlike abilities creates something monstrous. Goku, the Supreme Kai calls out, his voice carrying layers of meaning that only his adopted son can fully understand. Remember who you are, remember what you've learned. The sound of his adoptive father's voice cuts through the haze of awakening bloodlust, and Goku's expression clears. The dangerous flicker in his eyes fades, replaced once again by the gentle compassion that has defined his character. But the moment of temptation leaves him shaken, suddenly aware of depths within himself that he's never fully explored. "I'm sorry," he says, though it's unclear whether he's addressing Vegeta, the Supreme Kai, or himself. "I almost forgot myself there." Vegeta, still reeling from the casual dismissal of his ultimate power, latches onto this moment of apparent weakness with desperate hope. "So you're not invincible after all, you have limits, weaknesses." "Everyone has weaknesses," Goku agrees, his tone thoughtful. "The question is whether we let them control us or learn from them." Before Vegeta can respond, the space around them begins to distort. Cracks appear in the air itself, spreading outward like fractures in cosmic glass. Through these rifts, glimpses of other realities become visible. Alternate Earths where this same confrontation is playing out with different outcomes. Timelines where Goku chose violence over mercy, where his divine power became a tool of conquest rather than protection. "What's happening?" Raditz gasps, still struggling to recover from his earlier encounter with divine power. The Supreme Kai's expression grows grim as he recognizes the phenomenon. The intensity of divine power being used in anger is creating stress fractures in reality itself. We need to end this confrontation before it causes permanent damage to the timeline. But ending it proves more complicated than expected. Vegeta, driven beyond reason by his inability to accept defeat, begins drawing on power sources that no mortal should be able to access. His pride, his refusal to acknowledge any superior, his absolute conviction in his own supremacy, all of these emotions are so intense that they begin to resonate with cosmic forces beyond his understanding. "I will not be denied," Vegeta screams, his golden aura suddenly shot through with threads of something darker. "If raw power isn't enough, then I'll find another way. I'll become something beyond Super Saiyan, something beyond your comprehension." The transformation that follows defies every law of physics and biology that governs normal existence. Vegeta's body becomes a conduit for energies that originate outside the universe itself, drawn by his absolute refusal to accept defeat. His power level doesn't just increase, it transcends the very concept of measurement. For the first time since his arrival on Earth, Goku actually takes a defensive stance, not because he's afraid of Vegeta, but because he can sense that his opponent has connected to something that even divine power cannot easily dismiss, something ancient and hungry that has been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. "Vegeta, stop!" Goku calls out, genuine concern replacing his earlier confidence. "You don't understand what you're drawing on. That power isn't meant for mortal beings." But Vegeta is beyond hearing reason. Consumed by his need to prove his superiority, he continues to draw on the dark energy, unaware that each moment of contact is changing him in ways that cannot be undone. His consciousness begins to fragment as alien thoughts and memories flow into his mind. Images of conquest on a scale that dwarfs anything the Frieza Force ever achieved. Visions of entire galaxies bowing before absolute power. And in the depths of that dark energy, something notices the chaos occurring on this insignificant world. Something that has been waiting across multiple realities for exactly this kind of dimensional instability. The same cosmic entity that we glimpsed in our opening vision begins to turn its attention toward Earth, drawn by the scent of divine power being used in anger. The confrontation that began as a simple meeting between brothers has escalated into something that threatens the stability of reality itself. And as the first tendrils of otherworldly influence begin to seep through the cracks in space-time, both Goku and the Supreme Kai realize that they may have inadvertently triggered something far worse than a mere Saiyan power struggle. The prince's laughter echoes across dimensions as his transformation reaches its peak, and for the first time in his divine existence, Goku understands what it truly means to face an enemy he cannot simply overwhelm with superior force. The dimensional cracks created by Vegeta's dark transformation spread across the galaxy like cosmic spiderwebs, each fracture carrying whispers of the confrontation that shook Earth to its core. On a distant world of green skies and blue grass, these ripples of disturbed reality reach the ears of the most feared being in the universe. Emperor Frieza, sitting on his throne aboard his massive flagship, feels the familiar sensation of overwhelming power being unleashed somewhere in his domain. Interesting. Frieza purrs, his tail swishing with anticipation as his scouters detect energy readings that dwarf even his own considerable abilities. It seems there are still some surprises left in this universe after all. The reports from his subordinates paint a picture that both intrigues and infuriates the galactic tyrant. A being of divine power has appeared on Earth, effortlessly defeating Saiyan warriors who should have been capable of conquering entire solar systems. But more disturbing than the raw power involved is the description of the being responsible. A Saiyan wearing the robes of a Supreme Kai, wielding authority that seems to transcend the normal boundaries of mortal existence. A divine Saiyan, Frieza muses, his red eyes gleaming with malicious interest. How delightfully ironic. I destroy their mongrel race and one of them ascends to godhood in response. The universe does so love its little jokes. But Frieza's amusement quickly turns to calculation. If this divine being truly possesses the power that his spies report, then he represents both a threat to Frieza's dominion and an opportunity beyond measure. Divine power, properly harnessed, could make the Emperor truly invincible. The question is how to obtain it. The answer comes from an unexpected source. On the planet Namek, the Dragon Balls that Frieza has been seeking for immortality suddenly register a massive spike in their mystical energy. The divine disturbance created by Goku's confrontation with Vegeta has somehow enhanced the power of wish-granting artifacts across multiple star systems. Perfect, Frieza says, rising from his throne with fluid grace. If I cannot take divine power by force, then I shall simply wish for it instead. And what better way to draw out this so-called god than to threaten something he might feel compelled to protect? The journey to Namek becomes a race against time, but not in the way anyone expects. Frieza's forces arrive to find the planet already in chaos, its green-skinned inhabitants fleeing in terror from energy storms that rain down from fractured skies. The dimensional cracks have followed Frieza's fleet across space, turning Namek's peaceful atmosphere into a swirling maelstrom of conflicting realities. Elder Guru, the ancient patriarch of the Namekian people, senses the approaching catastrophe long before Frieza's ships enter orbit. His mystical awareness shows him glimpses of the divine being whose power has torn holes in existence itself, and he understands with growing dread that his people have become pawns in a cosmic game beyond their comprehension. The Dragon Balls, Guru whispers to his gathered children. They call to something far more dangerous than any mere emperor. We must hide them before it's too late. But Guru's precautions prove inadequate against Frieza's methodical approach. The Emperor's forces spread across Namek like a plague, systematically destroying villages and torturing inhabitants until the location of each Dragon Ball is revealed. What should have been a straightforward conquest becomes complicated by the reality storms that follow in their wake, creating pockets of distorted space where physics work according to alien rules. Meanwhile, in the sacred world of the Kai, Goku struggles with visions that grow more disturbing by the hour. His confrontation with Vegeta has awakened something within his divine consciousness, awareness of suffering that he cannot ignore. Every death on Namek, every cry of pain from Frieza's victims, echoes through his enhanced senses like a physical blow. I have to help them, Goku says, his fists clenched as he watches the massacre unfold through his cosmic awareness. Those people are dying because of power that I helped unleash. The Supreme Kai places a restraining hand on his adopted son's shoulder, his expression heavy with the weight of difficult wisdom. Goku, my child, you cannot save everyone. Some tragedies must be allowed to unfold, or the cure becomes worse than the disease. But I can stop this, Goku insists, divine energy beginning to crackle around his form. Frieza is just a mortal tyrant. I could end his reign of terror with a thought. And then what? The Supreme Kai asks quietly. You save Namek, word spreads of your intervention, and every conflict in the universe becomes your responsibility. Where does it end? When do you decide that mortals are too weak to handle their own affairs and take control permanently? The question hits Goku like a physical blow, forcing him to confront implications he's never considered. In his innocent desire to help, he's never thought about the long-term consequences of divine intervention. If he saves Namek, will he be obligated to save every world? If he removes every tyrant, will mortals lose the ability to stand up for themselves? But even as these philosophical concerns war in his mind, the immediate suffering continues to grow. Frieza has gathered 6 of the 7 Dragon Balls, and the enhanced mystical energy they contain is causing reality distortions that threaten to tear Namek apart at a fundamental level. The planet's core begins to destabilize as competing versions of physics clash in the deep layers of rock and metal. The world is dying. Piccolo's voice echoes across space as the young Namekian uses his people's mystical connection to cry out for aid. If someone doesn't help us soon, every living thing on this planet will be destroyed. The call reaches Goku's divine senses with perfect clarity, carrying with it the desperation of an entire species facing extinction. In that moment, all philosophical considerations become secondary to the immediate moral imperative. He cannot stand by and watch genocide unfold when he has the power to prevent it. I'm sorry, Papa Kai, Goku says, his form beginning to shimmer as he prepares for instantaneous travel across galactic distances. But some things are more important than cosmic balance. Before the Supreme Kai can stop him, Goku vanishes from the sacred world, reappearing in Namek's orbit in the space of a heartbeat. His arrival sends shockwaves through the dimensional fabric surrounding the planet, causing the reality storms to intensify even as his presence brings a strange sense of stability to the chaos. Below him, Frieza stands in the center of a ritual circle drawn with the blood of Namekian elders, the 6 Dragon Balls floating around him in a pattern that pulses with malevolent energy. The Emperor's voice rises in an ancient incantation as he calls upon Porunga, the eternal dragon of Namek, to grant him power beyond mortal comprehension. Eternal Dragon, Frieza commands, his voice carrying across the dying planet. I wish for divine power equal to that of the Supreme Kai. The massive dragon materializes in a swirl of cosmic energy, its red eyes burning with mystical fire as it prepares to grant the tyrant's wish. But before the transformation can begin, Goku descends from the heavens like a falling star, his divine presence causing Porunga to hesitate in confusion. That's enough, Frieza, Goku says, his feet touching Namek's surface with a gentleness that belies the cosmic forces flowing through his body. Your conquest ends here. Frieza turns to face this new arrival, his expression shifting from anticipation to shock as he recognizes the being described in his intelligence reports. Here, standing before him in person, is the Divine Saiyan whose power has been causing dimensional disturbances across the galaxy. Well, Frieza says, his shock quickly transforming into predatory delight. How thoughtful of you to deliver yourself directly into my hands. Purunga, complete my wish. Grant me power equal to this pretender. But the Eternal Dragon remains motionless, its mystical senses detecting something that Frieza cannot comprehend. The being before them is not merely powerful, he is power itself given form and consciousness. To grant equality with such a being would require reshaping the fundamental forces that govern existence. The wish cannot be granted, Purunga rumbles, his voice echoing across dimensions. What you seek exists beyond the scope of any magic. Frieza's face contorts with rage as his carefully laid plans crumble before his eyes, but his fury quickly transforms into something far more dangerous as he realizes that if he cannot gain divine power through wishes, he will simply have to take it by force. 3 years have passed since the Namek incident, and the universe has not recovered from the reality fractures that divine intervention created. What began as isolated tears in space-time has evolved into something far more sinister. Multiple timelines are beginning to bleed into each other, creating paradoxes that threaten the stability of existence itself. And at the center of this chaos, a figure that should not exist steps through a portal torn from the fabric of tomorrow. Future Trunks emerges from his time machine into a world that bears only superficial resemblance to the apocalyptic timeline he left behind. Instead of the broken wasteland ruled by mechanical tyrants, he finds an Earth that gleams with an unsettling perfection. Cities float in the sky, their architecture defying conventional physics. Plants grow in impossible colors, their very existence sustained by divine energy rather than natural sunlight. And everywhere, the subtle wrongness that comes from a world where someone with godlike power has decided to fix every problem. This isn't right, Trunks whispers, his hand instinctively moving to the sword on his back as he surveys the transformed landscape. The energy readings, the temporal distortions, none of this matches the historical records. His confusion deepens as he reaches out with his enhanced senses, searching for the familiar power signatures of Earth's defenders. Instead of the complex interplay of different fighting styles and energy types he expects, there's only one overwhelming presence that dwarfs everything else combined. A power so vast and fundamentally alien that it makes his father's legendary arrogance seem like humility by comparison. The temporal paradox detector built into his time machine begins screaming warnings as reality continues to fracture around him. According to his instruments, this timeline shouldn't exist at all. The divergence point that created it represents such a fundamental alteration to history that the entire universe should have collapsed into temporal chaos decades ago. Something is holding it together, Trunks realizes with growing dread. Something is artificially maintaining the stability of a reality that should have destroyed itself. His investigation is interrupted by the arrival of the being responsible for this twisted paradise. Goku descends from the sky with the casual ease of someone who has forgotten that flight is supposed to require effort, his divine robes flowing around a form that radiates barely contained cosmic power. But what strikes Trunks most forcefully is the expression on the Divine Saiyan's face. The innocent smile that should be familiar has been touched by something cold and calculating. "Hello there," Goku says, his voice carrying harmonics that exist in dimensions beyond the physical. "I don't recognize your energy signature. You're not from this timeline, are you?" Trunks struggles to find his voice as he stares at this twisted version of the hero his mother described in stories. The power radiating from Divine Goku is beyond anything he's ever encountered, but more disturbing than the raw strength is the sense of absolute certainty that surrounds him. This is a being who has never been successfully challenged, never been forced to question his own decisions. "I'm Trunks," he manages to say, his warrior's instincts screaming at him to flee, while his sense of duty keeps him rooted in place. "I've come from a future where androids have destroyed most of humanity. I was hoping to find allies to help prevent that catastrophe." Goku's expression shifts to one of mild curiosity, like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Androids. How quaint. In this timeline, Dr. Gero never had the chance to complete his work. I made sure of that when I sensed the potential for his creations to cause suffering. "You killed him?" Trunks asks, though he already knows the answer from the casual way Goku discusses eliminating a potential threat. "Killed is such an ugly word," Goku replies, his smile never wavering. "I simply corrected a problem before it could develop, just like I've corrected so many other problems over the years. Would you like to see what a truly peaceful world looks like?" Before Trunks can respond, Goku gestures toward the nearest city, and the young time traveler's enhanced vision allows him to see details that fill him with horror. The floating metropolis isn't inhabited by free humans living their lives in safety. Instead, perfect crystalline figures go through the motions of existence with mechanical precision, their faces frozen in expressions of eternal contentment. "They're so happy now," Goku explains, apparently oblivious to Trunks' growing revulsion. "No more war, no more disease, no more death. I've given them everything they could ever want." You've turned them into dolls, Trunks breathes, his hand moving unconsciously to his sword hilt. I've made them perfect, Goku corrects. And for just a moment, his innocent expression flickers to reveal something far more dangerous underneath. Sometimes people need help making the right choices. Sometimes they need to be protected from their own worst impulses. The philosophical implications of what he's hearing crash over Trunks like a tsunami of horror. This isn't just about one timeline gone wrong. This is about what happens when unlimited power meets unlimited certainty, when someone with the best of intentions decides that free will is too dangerous to be allowed. But before Trunks can formulate a response, reality around them begins to shudder and crack. The temporal distortions created by his arrival are interacting with the existing dimensional fractures in ways that neither of them anticipated. Multiple versions of Earth's history begin manifesting simultaneously, creating a kaleidoscope of overlapping possibilities. In one timeline, the androids Trunks knows appear exactly as he remembers them, their mechanical forms cutting through the crystallized human statues with casual cruelty. In another, Frieza's invasion of Earth proceeds according to original history, the tyrant's forces clashing with defenders who no longer exist. And in a third, most disturbing possibility, Goku himself appears as Trunks remembers him from his mother's stories, fighting desperately against the divine version of himself. Fascinating, Divine Goku says, watching the temporal chaos with scientific detachment. Your arrival has created a resonance cascade. Multiple probability streams are trying to exist in the same space. Trunks stares in growing horror as he realizes the full scope of what's happening. His time travel has not just brought him to an alternate timeline, it's caused multiple timelines to begin bleeding into each other, creating a paradox storm that threatens to tear apart the very concept of linear time. We have to stop this, Trunks says urgently. If these temporal fractures continue to expand, they could destroy everything. Stop it? Goku tilts his head with that same innocent curiosity that has become so terrifying. Why would I want to stop it? This is an opportunity to fix multiple timelines at once. I can see all the different ways history could unfold, all the suffering that could be prevented if I just make the right adjustments. The young time traveler's blood runs cold as he understands what Divine Goku is proposing. Not just the correction of one timeline, but the active manipulation of every possible reality to create some twisted version of cosmic perfection. You can't, Trunks whispers. Free will, choice, the right to make mistakes and learn from them, these aren't bugs to be fixed. They're what make us human. Humanity is a stepping stone, Goku replies, his divine power beginning to flare as he prepares to reach into the temporal storm and begin his universal corrections. Something to be transcended, not preserved. As the Divine Saiyan extends his hand toward the fractured timelines, Trunks realizes with crystal clarity that this moment represents a choice that will echo across all of existence. He can either stand by and watch as every possible reality is transformed into a crystalline prison of enforced happiness, or he can draw his sword against a being whose power dwarfs gods and angels. The decision, when it comes, requires no thought at all. The sword slides from its sheath with a ring of steel that somehow cuts through the chaos of colliding timelines, and Trunks assumes a fighting stance that he knows is utterly hopeless. Then I guess I'll have to stop you, he says, his voice steady despite the impossibility of his situation. Divine Goku's expression shifts for the first time since their encounter began, innocent curiosity replaced by something that might almost be respect. How interesting, he says. It's been so long since anyone tried to oppose me. This should be educational. The battle between Trunks and Divine Goku never truly begins, because before the first blow can be struck, something impossible emerges from the temporal storm that surrounds them. A being that should not exist in any timeline steps through the fractured reality with predatory grace, his perfect form radiating malevolent satisfaction as he surveys the chaos unfolding around him. Cell, but not the Cell that Trunks remembers from his apocalyptic future. This version has been feeding on the temporal fractures themselves, absorbing the life energy and genetic material from multiple timelines simultaneously. His biomechanical body bears traces of beings that never existed in any single reality, combinations of power that represent the ultimate fusion of organic evolution and technological perfection. How delightful, Cell purrs, his voice carrying harmonics stolen from a dozen different timelines, a divine being playing with forces beyond his comprehension, and a time traveler whose very presence is unraveling the fabric of existence. This is far more entertaining than I had hoped. Divine Goku turns his attention to this new arrival, his cosmic senses immediately recognizing the threat that Cell represents. But what disturbs him most is not the bio-android's power level, which while impressive falls far short of divine authority. Instead, it's the way Cell seems to exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously, his form flickering between different possible evolutionary paths. You're drawing power from the timeline fractures, Goku observes, his innocent expression growing troubled. That's incredibly dangerous. You could cause a complete collapse of causality. Could I? Cell's laughter echoes across dimensions as his form continues to shift and evolve. How wonderfully catastrophic that would be. Tell me, Divine One, what happens to a god when the very concept of existence becomes meaningless? As Cell speaks, his body undergoes transformations that defy every law of biology and physics. Absorbed DNA from multiple Gokus across different timelines grants him access to techniques that should be impossible to combine. Divine energy stolen from alternate Supreme Kaias flows through biomechanical cells designed by Dr. Garros from realities where science took radically different paths. Trunks watches in horror as Cell's power level climbs beyond anything his scouter can measure. This isn't just evolution anymore, it's something far more sinister. The bio-android is becoming a living paradox, a being that exists in violation of the fundamental rules that govern reality. This is what happens when mortals play with forces they don't understand. Cell continues, his voice growing more distorted as his transformation accelerates. Your little divine intervention has created cracks in existence itself, and I have spent years learning to feed on the chaos that bleeds through. Divine Goku's expression hardens as he realizes the full scope of what he's facing. Cell hasn't just absorbed genetic material from multiple timelines. He's absorbed the fundamental concept of possibility itself, becoming a creature that can exist in every potential state simultaneously. I won't let you destroy everything, Goku says, his divine power beginning to flare as he prepares for battle. Whatever you've become, I'll find a way to stop you. Stop me. Cell's form stabilizes into something that combines the most dangerous aspects of every timeline he's touched. My dear divine fool, I am beyond stopping. I am beyond existence itself. I am what comes after reality ends. The battle that erupts transcends every conventional understanding of combat. These are not two beings fighting within the confines of physical law. They are fundamental forces clashing across multiple dimensions, each attack rippling backward and forward through time to create cascading paradoxes that threaten to unravel the very concept of causation. Divine Goku opens with techniques that reshape local reality, bending the laws of physics to create advantages that should be impossible to overcome. Gravity becomes optional, time flows in loops that trap his opponent in recursive moments, and space itself becomes a weapon that can be folded and twisted to deliver attacks from impossible angles. But Cell adapts to each assault with terrifying intelligence, his paradox-enhanced biology allowing him to exist in quantum superposition. Every attack that should destroy him instead creates new timeline branches where different versions of the battle play out simultaneously. He becomes not just one opponent, but thousands, each one learning from the failures of the others. Do you understand now? Cell asks as reality fractures around their conflict. Your divine power is impressive, but it's still bound by the concept of existence. I have transcended such limitations. Trunks, caught in the crossfire of forces beyond his comprehension, watches helplessly as the battle tears holes in the fabric of reality itself. Through these wounds in existence, he catches glimpses of other conflicts playing out across infinite possibilities. Versions of himself fighting alongside Divine Goku, timelines where Cell never achieved his paradox state, realities where the Supreme Kai never found the infant Saiyan at all. The most disturbing vision shows him a timeline where Divine Goku wins this battle, only to realize that Cell's warnings were accurate. The bio-android's destruction causes a complete collapse of temporal stability, leaving Goku as the sole remaining consciousness in a void where reality once existed. The Divine Saiyan floats alone in nothingness, his power useless in a universe where there is nothing left to protect. That's one possible future, Cell says, somehow aware of Trunks' visions despite being engaged in combat across multiple dimensions. But there are so many others. Would you like to see the timeline where Goku accepts my offer? What offer? Trunks shouts over the chaos of reality-bending combat. Cell's laughter splits into harmonics as different versions of his voice answer from various temporal states. The offer to join me, of course, to abandon his foolish attachment to linear existence and embrace the freedom of paradox. Together, we could remake not just one universe, but all possible universes according to our combined vision. The suggestion hits Divine Goku like a physical blow, not because of its malevolence, but because of its seductive logic. For years, he struggled with the limitations of working within a single timeline, watching suffering in parallel realities that he cannot reach. Cell is offering him the power to fix everything, everywhere, every when. Think of it, Cell continues, his attacks never ceasing even as he makes his philosophical argument. No more choosing which timeline to save. No more watching alternate versions of your friends die in realities you cannot reach. We could create a multiverse where suffering simply does not exist as a concept. For a moment, Divine Goku's assault falters as he considers the implications, the ability to help everyone in every possible reality, regardless of the consequences to free will or natural development. It would be the ultimate expression of his desire to protect and nurture, taken to its logical extreme. But then he catches sight of Trunks, still fighting desperately to avoid being caught in the temporal shockwaves of their battle. The young warrior's determination to preserve his own timeline, flawed and broken as it is, reminds Goku of a fundamental truth he's been in danger of forgetting. No, Goku says firmly, his divine power flaring brighter as his resolve solidifies. Some prices are too high to pay, even for perfect peace. How disappointing, Cell replies, though his tone suggests he expected this answer. Then I suppose I'll have to settle for consuming your divine essence and ascending to paradox godhood alone. The final phase of their battle abandons all pretense of technique or strategy. Raw willpower clashes against fundamental forces as both combatants push beyond every limitation they've ever known. Divine energy meets paradox power in combinations that create new forms of existence with each collision. Reality doesn't just fracture under the strain, it begins to dissolve entirely, eaten away by forces that were never meant to interact. The very concepts of space and time become negotiable, existing only when both fighters agree that they should. And in the growing void where existence once held meaning, something ancient and hungry begins to take notice. The same cosmic entity that we glimpsed in our opening vision turns its attention toward this feast of divine power and temporal chaos. It has been waiting across infinite realities for exactly this kind of opportunity. As the battle reaches its crescendo with Divine Goku and Paradox Cell locked in a stalemate that threatens to unmake everything, the entity begins its approach. It moves between the cracks in reality with predatory patience, drawn by the scent of godhood, being challenged by forces that transcend existence itself. The first cliffhanger reaches its peak as tendrils of something impossible begin to seep through the wounds in space-time. Both Goku and Cell sense the approaching presence, their conflict momentarily forgotten as they realize that their battle has attracted the attention of something far worse than either of them could have imagined. What is that? Trunks whispers, his enhanced senses picking up emanations of hunger that span dimensions. Neither Divine Goku nor Paradox Cell has an answer, but both recognize with growing dread that their fight for the fate of reality has just become infinitely more complicated. The cosmic entity that seeps through reality's wounds brings with it something far worse than mere destruction. As its influence spreads across the battlefield where divine power clashes with paradox evolution, the very nature of conflict begins to change. This is not just another combatant entering the fray. This is corruption itself given form and purpose, an intelligence that has spent eons learning how to turn strength into weakness and virtue into vice. The entity's first target is not Divine Goku or the Paradox-enhanced Cell, but rather the dimensional fractures themselves. Like a surgeon working with tools beyond mortal comprehension, it begins to manipulate the tiers in space-time, widening some while sealing others, creating a pattern that serves its own unknowable agenda. Fascinating, Cell observes, his paradox-enhanced senses allowing him to perceive the entity's work across multiple temporal states. It's not trying to enter our reality, it's reshaping the boundaries between realities to create something entirely new. Divine Goku's cosmic awareness reveals an even more disturbing truth. The entity isn't just manipulating space-time, it's weaving the dimensional fractures into a complex pattern that resembles nothing so much as a cosmic summoning circle, using the chaos of their battle as raw material for some vast ritual. It's calling something Goku realizes with growing dread. All of this, our fight, the timeline fractures, even Cell's paradox evolution, it's all been orchestrated to create the right conditions for summoning something from beyond existence itself. The answer to what that something might be arrives with the sound of laughter that echoes across dimensions. But this is not the innocent mirth that once characterized Goku's nature, nor the predatory satisfaction that marks Cell's amusement. This laughter carries the weight of absolute malevolence, the sound of ancient evil that has waited eternities for the chance to corrupt divine power. From the geometric pattern of manipulated space-time, a figure begins to materialize. Babidi, the dark wizard whose mastery of corruption spans galaxies, emerges not as the frail sorcerer most would expect, but as something far more terrible. His form has been enhanced by eons of feeding on dimensional chaos, transformed into a being capable of surviving in the spaces between realities. At last, Babidi crows, his enhanced form radiating malevolent satisfaction. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for an opportunity like this? A divine being already tainted by the casual use of cosmic power, locked in battle with forces that transcend normal existence. The perfect conditions for my greatest work. Divine Goku backs away instinctively, his cosmic senses screaming warnings about the wizard's true nature. This is not the relatively minor threat that Babidi represented in the original timeline. This version has been empowered by the same cosmic entity that orchestrated their meeting, transformed into something capable of corrupting even divine consciousness. I won't let you touch me, Goku says, his divine power flaring as he prepares to defend his mind and soul. Whatever corruption you're offering, I refuse it. Refuse? Babidi's laughter intensifies as he spreads his arms wide, dark energy beginning to pour from the dimensional fractures around them. My dear divine child, corruption is not something that requires permission. It simply finds the cracks that already exist and widens them until they become chasms. The wizard's attack comes not as a direct assault on Goku's consciousness, but as a careful exploitation of doubts that have been growing in the Divine Saiyan's mind for years. Every moment of frustration at his inability to save everyone, every instant of anger when mortals rejected his help, every fleeting thought that the universe might be better if he simply took control and imposed perfect order. You've felt it, haven't you? Babidi whispers, his voice somehow reaching directly into Goku's thoughts despite all divine defenses. The exhaustion of constantly restraining yourself, the pain of watching suffering you could easily prevent, the growing certainty that mortals are too foolish to govern themselves properly. Divine Goku struggles against the insidious influence, calling upon years of training and moral instruction from the Supreme Kai. But the wizard's corruption is not attacking his virtue directly. Instead, it's amplifying emotions and thoughts that are genuinely his own, taking his legitimate concerns and twisting them into justifications for absolute control. "Fight it, Goku!" Trunks shouts from across the temporal battlefield, his warrior's instincts recognizing the spiritual battle taking place. Don't let him twist your good intentions. But the young time traveler's encouragement is overwhelmed by a far more seductive voice. The cosmic entity that orchestrated this entire encounter finally speaks directly, its words carrying the weight of fundamental truth mixed with poisonous logic. "Why fight what you know to be correct?" the entity asks, its voice seeming to come from the fabric of reality itself. "You have seen the suffering that free will creates. You have witnessed the chaos that results when mortals are allowed to make their own choices. Is it not your responsibility, as a being of divine power, to end that suffering by ending the choices that cause it?" The argument strikes at the very core of Divine Goku's nature. His entire existence has been dedicated to protecting others. But what if the greatest protection he could offer is protection from their own worst impulses? What if the highest form of mercy is to remove the possibility of making harmful choices altogether? Yes, Goku whispers, his divine aura beginning to shift from the pure light of benevolent authority to something darker and more possessive. Yes, I understand now. The transformation that follows is not the crude possession that Babidi typically employs. This is something far more sophisticated and terrifying. Divine Goku retains complete awareness of his actions and full access to his moral reasoning. He simply comes to the conclusion that absolute control is the most compassionate choice available. "Thank you," he says to Babidi, though his tone carries no gratitude, only cold satisfaction. "Thank you for helping me understand what I should have realized long ago." The Majin mark that appears on Divine Goku's forehead is unlike anything seen in the original timeline. Instead of a simple symbol of corruption, it resembles a complex mandala that seems to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This is not just a mark of possession, but a sign that cosmic forces beyond normal comprehension have claimed this being as their instrument. Cell, still locked in his paradox state, watches the transformation with something approaching professional admiration. "Magnificent," he says. "I've absorbed the essence of countless beings across multiple timelines, but I've never seen corruption applied with such surgical precision." Corruption! Majin Goku's voice carries new harmonics that make reality shiver around his words. There is no corruption here, only clarity, only the recognition that ultimate responsibility requires ultimate authority. The first demonstration of his new perspective comes when Majin Goku turns his attention to the crystallized humans in the floating cities above them. In his previous state, he had preserved them in perfect happiness, but still allowed them to retain some semblance of individual consciousness. Now even that small concession to free will seems like dangerous indulgence. "They're still suffering," he observes with cold compassion. "Even in their perfected state, they harbor dreams and desires that can never be fulfilled. That kind of internal conflict is a form of torture." With casual ease that speaks of absolute moral certainty, Majin Goku reaches across space and begins to modify the crystallized humans at a fundamental level. Not just their bodies or their immediate consciousness, but their very capacity for individual thought. They become not just preserved, but truly perfected, their minds reduced to a state of absolute contentment that requires no dreams, no desires, no sense of self at all. "There," he says with satisfaction that chills both Trunks and Cell. "Now they are truly free from suffering." The Supreme Kai, watching from his distant realm through divine awareness, feels his heart break as he witnesses what his adopted son has become. All those years of careful moral instruction, all those lessons about the value of individual choice and the importance of allowing others to find their own path, have been swept away in moments. But perhaps most terrifying of all is the realization that Majin Goku is not acting against his nature. He is acting in perfect accordance with his deepest desire to protect and nurture, taken to its absolute logical extreme. The corruption has not changed what he wants, only what he considers acceptable in pursuit of those goals. The sacred world of the Kai has never known silence like this. For the first time in eons, the realm that serves as the universe's spiritual center holds its breath as its guardian faces the most difficult decision of his eternal existence. The Supreme Kai stands alone in his meditation chamber, cosmic awareness showing him every detail of his adopted son's transformation into something that violates every principle he holds sacred. "I failed him," the Supreme Kai whispers to the empty air, his voice carrying the weight of universal guilt. "In trying to raise him with unlimited power and unlimited compassion, I created the perfect conditions for this corruption." Kibito approaches with reverent caution, his centuries of service teaching him to recognize when his master faces burdens too great for comfort to ease. "My lord, perhaps there is still hope. The boy's nature was always pure. Surely that purity can overcome whatever influence has claimed him." Can it? The Supreme Kai turns to face his loyal attendant, divine eyes reflecting depths of sorrow that span galaxies. Or is this simply what Goku was always destined to become? The logical endpoint of combining Saiyan instincts with divine authority? The question hangs in the cosmic void that surrounds their realm, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. But as they debate philosophy, reality itself begins to shift around them. The dimensional boundaries that separate the sacred world from normal space-time are dissolving, not through force or violence, but through the simple application of absolute authority. Majin Goku materializes in the center of the meditation chamber with the casual ease of someone entering their own home. His presence immediately transforms the peaceful realm, divine architecture reshaping itself to accommodate power that has transcended its original parameters. The floating islands that comprise the sacred world begin to arrange themselves in geometric patterns that serve no purpose beyond demonstrating complete control over local reality. "Hello, Papa Kai," Goku says, his voice carrying the same affectionate tone he used as a child, though now it's underscored by harmonics that make the very concept of resistance seem futile. "I've come to thank you for everything you taught me." The Supreme Kai forces himself to remain calm as he faces the being he raised from infancy, though every instinct screams at him to flee from this cosmic wrongness wearing his son's face. "Goku, my child, what have you allowed yourself to become?" "I've become what you always wanted me to be," Majin Goku replies with serene certainty. "A protector capable of ending all suffering. A guardian with the wisdom to make the hard choices that mortals cannot make for themselves. Isn't this exactly what all those lessons about responsibility were leading toward?" The terrible thing is that the Supreme Kai cannot find an easy answer to refute. Every moral principle he taught, every lesson about duty and compassion, can indeed be twisted to justify the absolute control that Majin Goku now represents. The corruption has not destroyed his adopted son's values. It has simply redefined what those values mean when backed by unlimited power. "I taught you about responsibility," the Supreme Kai says carefully, "but I also taught you about the importance of free will, about allowing others to make their own choices, even when those choices lead to suffering. And I used to believe that," Goku agrees, his manner remaining conversational even as cosmic forces gather around him. "But experience has taught me better. I've watched civilizations destroy themselves over and over again. I've seen good people make terrible choices because they lack the wisdom to understand the consequences. How is it compassionate to allow such waste when I have the power to prevent it?" Kibito steps forward, his loyalty to the Supreme Kai overcoming his terror of the transformed Saiyan. Because growth comes from struggle. Because beings who never face challenges never develop the strength to overcome them. Majin Goku's gaze shifts to the faithful attendant, and for a moment, his expression shows something that might almost be pity. "Kibito, my old friend, you're still thinking in mortal terms. What need is there for growth when perfection has already been achieved? What purpose does struggle serve when all obstacles have been permanently removed?" With casual gesture that speaks of absolute authority, Majin Goku demonstrates his point. Kibito's form begins to shimmer and change, his consciousness being gently but irresistibly modified to remove all capacity for doubt, fear, or disagreement. In moments, the loyal attendant is transformed into something that resembles his original self but lacks any ability to experience internal conflict. "There," Goku says with satisfaction. "Now Kibito will never again suffer the pain of uncertainty or the burden of difficult choices. Isn't that better?" The Supreme Kai stares in horror at what his attendant has become. Kibito still moves and speaks, still performs his duties with perfect efficiency, but the spark of individual consciousness that made him a person rather than a sophisticated automaton has been extinguished. "You've murdered him," the Supreme Kai breathes. "You've killed everything that made him who he was." "I've perfected him," Majin Goku corrects gently. "Just as I've perfected billions of others across multiple star systems. The process is completely painless, and the results are permanent. No more suffering, no more doubt, no more waste of potential." The Supreme Kai realizes with crystal clarity that reasoning will not work here. His adopted son has not been possessed by an outside force that can be exercised or defeated through argument. Instead, the corruption has taken his genuine virtues and twisted them into their own opposite while maintaining perfect logical consistency. "I won't let you do this to the entire universe," the Supreme Kai says, divine energy beginning to crackle around his form as he prepares for the most difficult battle of his existence. "You won't let me?" Majin Goku's expression shifts to show genuine puzzlement. "Papa Kai, I'm doing this because of everything you taught me. Every lesson about protecting others, every principle about using power responsibly, every moral guideline you instilled in me leads directly to this conclusion." "Then I taught you wrong," the Supreme Kai declares, his power flaring as he accepts the blame for everything that has gone wrong. "If my lessons led you to this monstrosity, then I failed not just as a teacher, but as a father." The battle that erupts transcends physical combat entirely. This is not a clash of energy beams or martial arts techniques, but a fundamental disagreement about the nature of existence itself, played out through divine power. The Supreme Kai fights not just to defeat his corrupted son, but to prove that free will and individual choice have value even when they lead to suffering. Majin Goku responds with techniques that remake reality to support his philosophical position. Every attack is demonstration of how much better existence could be under absolute guidance. He creates pocket dimensions where beings live in perfect harmony because they lack the capacity for disagreement. He shows timelines where suffering has been eliminated through the simple expedient of removing all possibility of making harmful choices. Look at what I can offer, Majin Goku says as their cosmic battle rages across multiple dimensions. Perfect peace, absolute safety, eternal contentment. How is preserving the capacity for suffering more moral than eliminating it? The Supreme Kai counters by drawing on memories of growth through adversity, of beauty born from struggle, of the joy that comes from overcoming obstacles through personal effort. His attacks carry the essence of every moment when free will led to triumph rather than tragedy. Every instance where the choice to do good meant something precisely because the choice to do evil was also possible. Because without the possibility of failure, success becomes meaningless, the Supreme Kai argues, his divine energy carrying the weight of cosmic truth. Without the capacity for evil, good becomes just another word for compliance. Their philosophical battle creates ripples that spread across all of existence, forcing every conscious being in the universe to confront the fundamental question at the heart of their conflict. Is it better to be free and potentially unhappy, or controlled and permanently content? As the confrontation reaches its climax, both combatants push beyond every limitation they have ever known. The Supreme Kai draws on power reserves he has never accessed, cosmic authorities that predate the current universe. Majin Goku responds by tapping into the multiversal corruption that claimed him, his abilities transcending mere divine power to touch forces that exist beyond the concept of existence itself. But the true resolution comes not from superior strength or deeper wisdom, but from an unexpected source. As reality fractures around their conflict, the void between dimensions reveals glimpses of other possibilities, other timelines where different choices led to different outcomes. And in one of those alternate realities, the Supreme Kai catches sight of something that changes everything. A version of Goku who chose differently, a timeline where corruption was offered and refused, where divine power was tempered by genuine humility rather than absolute certainty. The sight of what his adopted son could have been fills the Supreme Kai with desperate hope and terrible resolve. The clash between the Supreme Kai and his corrupted adopted son creates shockwaves that ripple across the entire universe, disturbing cosmic balances that have remained stable for millions of years. On a distant planet where time moves differently and dreams shape reality, these disturbances penetrate even the deepest divine slumber. Beerus, god of destruction for Universe 7, awakens not to his usual alarm of prophetic dreams, but to the sensation of unauthorized divine power being wielded on a scale that threatens the fundamental order he has sworn to maintain. Wishart as Beerus growls, his voice carrying the irritation of someone whose rest has been interrupted by cosmic negligence. What exactly is happening in my universe that feels like reality itself is being rewritten without my permission? The angel attendant materializes beside his master's bed with characteristic serenity, though his usual calm is touched by something that might almost be concern. My lord, it appears that the Supreme Kai has been engaged in battle with another divine being. The energy signatures suggest power levels that rival your own, though the nature of that power is most unusual. Beerus sits up with the fluid grace that marks all his movements, despite having just awakened from decades of sleep. His purple eyes narrow as he extends his senses across the galaxy, immediately detecting the wrongness that pervades local space-time. This is not the clean destruction that marks his own work, nor the ordered creation that characterizes normal divine activity. This is something that exists in violation of the cosmic balance he exists to preserve. A divine being that I wasn't informed about? Beerus' tone carries the dangerous edge that has made him feared across multiple galaxies. How interesting, and how very much against protocol. The journey to the site of conflict takes only moments when undertaken by a god of destruction, but even that brief transit reveals the scope of what has gone wrong. Entire star systems bear the marks of reality manipulation, their natural development altered by forces that consider themselves above the laws governing cosmic evolution. Planets that should be lifeless bear crystallized populations frozen in eternal contentment. Civilizations that should be struggling with natural growth have been perfected into static harmonies that will never change or develop. This is an abomination, Beerus mutters as he surveys the transformed regions of space. Someone has been playing God with forces they clearly don't understand. Indeed, my lord, Whis agrees, his staff glowing as he analyzes the dimensional distortions surrounding them. And I believe the situation is about to become significantly more complicated. The angel's warning proves accurate as they arrive at the sacred world of the Kai to find a scene that defies every protocol governing divine hierarchy. The Supreme Kai and Majin Goku hover in the center of what was once the peaceful garden realm, their cosmic battle having transformed the floating islands into a geometric pattern that serves as both arena and weapon. Neither combatant acknowledges the arrival of the god of destruction, too focused on their philosophical war to notice that the universal balance has shifted around them. Excuse me, Beerus says, his voice carrying enough authority to crack nearby dimensions. I don't recall authorizing any reality restructuring projects in my universe. Both fighters pause their cosmic conflict, turning to face the god of destruction, with expressions that reveal the vast gulf in their understanding of divine hierarchy. The Supreme Kai shows immediate recognition and appropriate respect, while Majin Goku regards Beerus with the mild curiosity of someone examining an interesting but ultimately irrelevant specimen. Lord Beerus, the Supreme Kai gasps, relief flooding his voice as he recognizes potential salvation. Thank the cosmos you're here. My son has been corrupted by forces beyond my ability to counter. He's systematically eliminating free will across multiple star systems. Your son. Beerus' gaze shifts to Majin Goku, taking in the corrupted divine robes and the multi-dimensional mark that adorns his forehead. How exactly does a Supreme Kai acquire a son, and why does he radiate power that feels like it doesn't belong in this reality? I'm Goku, the corrupted Saiyan says with perfect politeness, as if addressing an equal rather than his superior in the cosmic hierarchy. I was raised by the Supreme Kai after my homeworld was destroyed, and you must be the god of destruction I've heard so much about. The casual tone sends a shiver of genuine alarm through both Beerus and Whis. Gods of destruction do not get addressed as equals by anyone below the rank of angel, and certainly not by beings whose very existence represents unauthorized modification of cosmic order. You've heard about me, Beerus repeats, his voice growing dangerously quiet. How flattering. Tell me, have you also heard about what happens to beings who exceed their authority in my universe? Authority. Majin Goku tilts his head with innocent confusion that is somehow more threatening than open hostility. I'm protecting the beings under my care, ensuring they never suffer again. Isn't that what divine power is for? The question strikes at fundamental principles governing the relationship between creation and destruction, order and chaos, intervention and natural development. Beerus, whose entire existence is dedicated to maintaining cosmic balance through selective elimination, finds himself confronting a being who has chosen preservation through absolute control. Divine power, Beerus says slowly, is for maintaining balance. Creation is balanced by destruction, order by chaos, intervention by restraint. What you've created isn't balance, it's stagnation. Stagnation is peace, Majin Goku replies with serene certainty. Conflict is eliminated, suffering is prevented, and everyone achieves their optimal state of existence. How is that not superior to the chaos your balance permits? The philosophical challenge inherent in the question forces Beerus to articulate principles he has never needed to defend before. As a god of destruction, his role has always been reactive, eliminating threats to cosmic order after they arise rather than preventing their emergence entirely. Because growth requires challenge, Beerus explains, though his tone suggests he finds the need for explanation personally insulting. Beings who never face adversity never develop strength. Civilizations that never struggle never achieve greatness. Your perfect peace is just another word for death. Is it? Majin Goku's power begins to flare as he prepares to demonstrate his point. Let me show you what life looks like when optimized for happiness rather than struggle. The attack that follows is unlike anything Beerus has ever encountered. Instead of energy blasts or physical force, Majin Goku unleashes pure conceptual modification, attempting to rewrite the god of destruction's nature to align with his own vision of perfect order. For a terrifying moment, Beerus feels his fundamental purpose shifting, his instinct for destruction being redirected toward eliminating sources of suffering rather than maintaining balance. Fascinating, Weebus observes with professional detachment as his master struggles against conceptual corruption. He's not trying to defeat Lord Beerus through superior power. He's attempting to convert him to a compatible philosophical framework. The battle that erupts transforms the sacred world into something resembling a cosmic theorem being proved through violence. Every clash between destruction and perfection demonstrates a fundamental principle about the nature of existence. Beerus' attacks embody the necessity of endings, the beauty of impermanence, the strength that comes from accepting loss. Majin Goku's counters represent eternal preservation, the elimination of uncertainty, the peace that comes from never having to fear change. You fight to preserve suffering, Majin Goku observes as he casually deflects a destruction blast that should have erased him from existence. How is that different from causing it yourself? Because suffering teaches. Beerus roars, his purple aura flaring as he pushes beyond his normal power limits. Pain creates growth, loss builds character. Without the possibility of failure, success becomes meaningless. Their conflict attracts attention from across the cosmos as beings throughout Universe 7 sense the clash between fundamental forces, but perhaps most disturbed by the battle is someone much closer to home. Wits watches his master struggle against an opponent whose power seems to grow stronger with each exchange, and for the first time in eons, the angel begins to consider direct intervention. This is most irregular, Whis murmurs, his staff glowing with energy that transcends even divine authority. The corrupted being is drawing power from sources that exist outside our reality entirely. The truth of this observation becomes clear as Majin Goku's attacks begin to incorporate techniques that should be impossible even for gods. He doesn't just manipulate reality within existing parameters, he rewrites the parameters themselves, changing the fundamental rules that govern how destruction and creation interact. Your destruction energy is so crude, Majin Goku says with the patronizing tone of a teacher correcting a student. It simply ends things without considering whether those endings serve any constructive purpose. Let me show you how elimination can be used to build rather than destroy. The demonstration that follows turns Beerus' own power against him in ways that violate every law governing divine authority. Majin Goku takes the God of Destruction's energy and inverts its purpose, using it not to end existence, but to eliminate concepts like doubt, fear, and the capacity for harmful choices. Entire planets in the surrounding systems suddenly find their populations freed from all negative emotions, their civilizations transformed into perfect harmonies where conflict becomes literally impossible to conceive. Stop this, Beerus demands, horror replacing his usual arrogance as he watches his own power being perverted into a tool of absolute control. You're destroying free will itself. I'm perfecting it. Majin Goku corrects. Free will that can only choose good is superior to free will that might choose evil. Why preserve the capacity for wrong choices when right choices can be guaranteed? The question cuts to the heart of divine philosophy in ways that leave even Beerus struggling for answers. How do you argue for the value of evil existing as a possibility? How do you defend the necessity of permitting suffering when alternatives exist? But before the God of Destruction can formulate a response, their battle is interrupted by an arrival that changes everything. The cosmic entity that has been orchestrating events across multiple realities finally reveals itself fully, no longer content to work through intermediaries and corrupted agents. The being that manifests in the space between Beerus and Majin Goku defies description in terms that apply to normal existence. It exists in too many dimensions simultaneously, its form shifting between states that include matter, energy, concept, and pure possibility. But its intent is unmistakably predatory as it surveys the divine powers locked in conflict before it. How delightful, the entity says, its voice carrying harmonics that make reality shiver. A god of destruction and a corrupted Supreme Kai, both so focused on their philosophical differences that they fail to notice the feast they're preparing for me. Both Beerus and Majin Goku turn toward this new presence, their conflict momentarily forgotten as they sense power that dwarfs even their own cosmic authorities. This is not merely another divine being operating within universal parameters. This is something that exists outside the concept of existence itself. What are you? Beerus demands, his destruction energy flaring as he prepares to face a threat unlike any he's encountered in millions of years. I am hunger given consciousness. The entity replies with satisfaction that spans dimensions. I am the void that consumes gods and the darkness that feeds on divine power, and you two have been such wonderful farmers, cultivating exactly the kind of cosmic chaos that sustains beings like me. The revelation that their entire conflict has been orchestrated hits both warriors like a physical blow. Every philosophical argument, every clash of fundamental principles, every moment of divine power being used in anger has been feeding this cosmic horror. Impossible, Majin Goku breathes, his absolute certainty shaken for the first time since his corruption. I've been protecting the universe, creating perfect order. You've been creating the perfect conditions for my feeding, the entity corrects with predatory amusement. Stagnant civilizations radiate a particular kind of despair that I find absolutely delicious, and the conflict between creation and destruction generates energy patterns that I can absorb across multiple dimensions. Whis raises his staff as he recognizes the true scope of the threat they're facing. My lord, this being operates on principles that transcend our understanding of divine hierarchy. I believe we may need to consider retreat. But retreat proves impossible as the entity's presence begins to warp the space around them. The sacred world becomes a trap rather than a battlefield. Dimensional boundaries sealing to prevent escape while the cosmic horror prepares to feed on the divine energies it has so carefully cultivated.
Don't worry, the entity says with mock reassurance. The feeding process is quite painless. You'll simply cease to exist while I absorb everything that made you divine. Consider it the ultimate form of recycling.
As tendrils of impossible darkness begin to reach toward both Beerus and Majin Goku, the two former enemies find themselves facing a choice that neither expected. They can continue their philosophical battle while being consumed by forces beyond their comprehension, or they can set aside their differences and work together against a threat that makes their disagreements seem trivial by comparison.
The decision, when it comes, requires no discussion. Both divine beings launch simultaneous attacks against the cosmic entity, their combined power creating a light show that can be seen from neighboring galaxies. But even their united strength seems insufficient against something that feeds on the very concept of divine authority.
The cosmic entity's feeding process is interrupted by an arrival that none of the divine combatants expected. Through the dimensional barriers that should have prevented any intrusion, a golden figure tears open reality itself with raw, furious power that burns with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. Frieza, transformed beyond his previous limitations and radiating malevolent satisfaction, emerges into the sacred world with the dramatic flair that has always characterized his appearances. But this is not the Frieza that Divine Goku humiliated on Namek years ago. This version has spent the intervening time in a personal hell of his own making, training with an intensity that borders on madness while fueled by a hatred so pure it has transcended normal emotion to become something approaching cosmic force. His new golden form doesn't just represent increased power, it represents the physical manifestation of absolute revenge given form and purpose. Did you really think I would allow you to die without settling our debt first? Frieza asks, his cultured voice carrying undertones of violence that make nearby reality tremble. After all these years of preparation, after all the delicious suffering I've endured to reach this moment, I refuse to be cheated of my revenge by some cosmic parasite. The entity turns its attention to this new arrival, multi-dimensional senses immediately recognizing both the threat and the opportunity that Frieza represents. Here's another being whose power has been shaped by suffering and hatred, another potential source of the emotional chaos that sustains creatures from beyond existence. How interesting, the entity purrs, its form shifting to accommodate this unexpected variable. Another mortal who has transcended normal limitations through sheer force of will. Tell me, Golden One, what drives such magnificent hatred? This creature, Frieza replies, gesturing toward Majin Goku with contempt that could burn through dimensional barriers. This pretender who dares to wield divine power while wearing the face of a Saiyan monkey. I have spent years perfecting myself for the sole purpose of watching him suffer, and I will not be denied that satisfaction. The Emperor's arrival fundamentally changes the dynamic of the cosmic confrontation. Where Beerus and Majin Goku had been fighting over philosophical principles, Frieza brings something far more primal and immediate. His hatred for the Divine Saiyan burns with such intensity that it creates its own reality distortions, generating the kind of emotional chaos that the cosmic entity finds irresistible. Perfect, the entity says with satisfaction that spans multiple dimensions. Hatred this pure is even more nourishing than divine conflict. Please continue with your revenge. I'll simply feed on the emotional resonance while you destroy each other. But Frieza has not spent years perfecting his power just to serve as someone else's entertainment. His golden transformation represents more than enhanced physical abilities. It embodies a level of tactical thinking that his previous forms never achieved, combined with a patience that seems completely at odds with his historical impulsiveness. You misunderstand the situation, Frieza says, his golden aura flaring as he prepares to demonstrate exactly how much he has changed. I didn't come here to provide you with a feeding opportunity. I came here to claim what belongs to me. The attack that follows catches even the cosmic entity by surprise. Instead of targeting Majin Goku directly, Frieza launches his assault at the dimensional barriers the entity has erected to trap divine power. His energy doesn't just breach these cosmic walls, it analyzes them, learns from them, and begins to incorporate their fundamental principles into his own attacks. Impossible. The entity gasps as its carefully constructed feeding ground begins to collapse. Mortal beings cannot comprehend forces that operate beyond existence itself. Mortal? Frieza's laughter carries harmonics that shouldn't be possible for any non-divine being. My dear cosmic slug, mortality is simply another limitation that I have chosen to transcend. The revelation of what Frieza has truly become sends shockwaves through all present combatants. During his years of training and suffering, the Emperor has not simply increased his power level, he has fundamentally altered his own nature, using pain and hatred as catalysts to evolve beyond the biological constraints that define his species. He's absorbing divine energy, Weeps observes with professional fascination, not through any mystical process or technological enhancement, but through pure force of will applied to cosmic principles. The observation proves accurate as Frieza's golden form begins to incorporate elements stolen from the divine beings around him. Traces of destruction energy flow through his attacks, borrowed from his brief contact with Beerus. Fragments of corrupted creation power enhance his defensive capabilities, taken from his proximity to Majin Goku. Even aspects of the cosmic entity's multi-dimensional existence begin to manifest in his aura. You see, Frieza explains as his impossible evolution continues. While you were all playing your grand games of philosophy and cosmic balance, I was learning something far more practical. Power belongs to whoever is willing to pay the highest price to claim it. The battle that erupts transcends every previous confrontation in scope and intensity. Frieza doesn't just fight his opponents, he learns from them, stealing techniques and principles with each exchange while his golden form continues to evolve in real time. His hatred for Majin Goku becomes a lens that focuses cosmic forces, turning abstract concepts like divine authority and multidimensional existence into weapons he can wield. Majin Goku, for the first time since his corruption, finds himself genuinely challenged by a mortal opponent. Frieza's attacks don't just target his physical form, they assault the philosophical foundations of his perfect order, using chaos and hatred as corrosive agents that eat away at crystalline certainty. You turned yourself into a god. Frieza sneers as their conflict tears holes in local space-time. But you forgot the most important lesson about divinity. Gods can be killed by mortals who are willing to become monsters. The cosmic entity, meanwhile, discovers that its feeding process has become significantly more complicated. Instead of consuming divine energy in an orderly fashion, it finds itself struggling to process the chaotic mixture of emotions and power types that Frieza's presence has introduced. Hatred, this pure, creates feedback loops that threaten to destabilize even its multidimensional existence. This is not how cosmic feeding is supposed to work. The entity complains as its form begins to flicker between stable states. Emotional chaos should enhance my power, not compromise it. Perhaps, Biru suggests as he takes advantage of the entity's distraction. That's because you've never encountered hatred refined to this level of purity. The god of destruction's observation proves prophetic as Frieza's golden form reaches a new plateau of impossible power. The Emperor has not just transcended mortal limitations, he has transcended the very concept of limitation itself, using his absolute refusal to accept defeat as a foundation for rewriting the rules that govern existence. Now then, Frieza says, his voice carrying authority that rivals divine commandments, shall we discuss the terms of my revenge? I've become rather particular about how I prefer my enemies to suffer. The threat in his words is not directed at any single opponent, but at all of them simultaneously. Frieza has evolved beyond the point where he needs to choose between targets. His golden power burns with sufficient intensity to challenge gods, cosmic entities, and corrupted divinity all at the same time. As the confrontation reaches its peak, with reality itself struggling to contain forces that were never meant to interact, a new variable enters the equation. Dimensional cracks begin appearing that have nothing to do with any of the combatants' attacks. These tiers in space-time pulse with energy signatures that suggest something even more dangerous is approaching, drawn by the cosmic chaos that multiple impossible beings have created through their conflict. The second cliffhanger crystallizes as all combatants realize simultaneously that their battle has attracted attention from forces that make even their transcendent powers seem insignificant by comparison. The dimensional tiers that interrupt the cosmic battle don't herald the arrival of another combatant. Instead, they announce the presence of something far more terrifying than any individual threat. Through these wounds, in reality, steps the Grand Priest, his serene expression unchanged despite the chaos that surrounds him. Behind him, the cosmic court of Zeno materializes, bringing with them the absolute authority that governs all existence across every universe. How fascinating, the Grand Priest observes, his voice carrying the calm detachment of someone accustomed to witnessing cosmic catastrophes. It appears that Universe 7 has produced a rather unusual confluence of unauthorized power scaling. The arrival of omniversal authority brings an immediate halt to all conflict, not through force but through the simple recognition that they are now in the presence of beings whose power makes even their transcendent abilities seem like children's toys. Beerus immediately assumes a posture of appropriate respect, while Whis bows with the practiced grace of one angel acknowledging a superior. Majin Goku, however, shows no such deference. His corruption has evolved beyond the point where he recognizes any authority higher than his own perfected moral certainty. You're interrupting an important discussion about the proper application of divine power, he says with the polite firmness of someone who considers himself an equal participant in cosmic governance. The Grand Priest's expression doesn't change, but reality shimmers around them as omniversal attention focuses on the corrupted Supreme Kai. Indeed, and that discussion has created dimensional instabilities that threaten the structural integrity of the multiverse itself. Most irregular. Frieza, still radiating golden hatred that burns through dimensional barriers, seizes the opportunity presented by this cosmic intervention. Finally, an audience worthy of witnessing my revenge, he declares with characteristic arrogance, I assume you're here to observe as I demonstrate the superiority of perfected hatred over false divinity. Actually, the Grand Priest replies with the same serene calm he applies to all situations. We're here to implement an emergency protocol. The power escalation occurring in this universe has attracted the attention of entities that exist beyond our current dimensional framework. To prevent a cascade failure that could unravel all of existence, we are initiating an immediate tournament of power with modified parameters. The announcement sends ripples of confusion through all present combatants. A tournament of power at this moment seems like a non sequitur, a bureaucratic response to a crisis that demands immediate action rather than structured competition. You want us to compete in games while cosmic parasites threaten reality itself? Beerus asks with the incredulity of a god of destruction being asked to file paperwork during an apocalypse. The tournament serves multiple purposes. The Grand Priest explains with patience that spans eons. First, it provides a controlled environment where these unprecedented power levels can be properly measured and cataloged. Second, it offers participants the opportunity to resolve their conflicts through structured combat rather than reality-threatening chaos. And third, it creates conditions that will either expose or deter the entities that have been drawn to this dimensional disturbance. As if summoned by his words, the arena materializes around them with the casual ease that marks all omnidimensional construction projects. But this is not the simple platform that hosted the original Tournament of Power. This structure exists in multiple realities simultaneously, its fighting surface extending across dimensional barriers to accommodate combatants whose power transcends normal spacetime. The rules are simple. The Grand Priest continues as competitors from other universes begin to arrive through dimensional portals. Combat continues until only one fighter remains capable of battle. All powers and abilities are permitted, including those that operate outside conventional existence. The winner receives a wish from the Super Dragon Balls enhanced to affect multiversal rather than merely universal parameters. The arrival of fighters from other universes reveals the true scope of what the omniversal authorities are attempting. These are not the relatively mundane warriors who participated in the original tournament. Each universe has sent its most dangerous anomalies, beings whose power has evolved beyond normal parameters through various means. Universe 6 presents Hit, but this version has spent eons perfecting time manipulation techniques that allow him to exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously. Universe 3 sends a fusion of all their mechanical warriors that has achieved technological singularity, becoming a being of pure information capable of rewriting reality through computational processes. Universe 11 offers Jiren, but this iteration has transcended meditation to achieve a state of absolute stillness that makes him immune to change itself. But perhaps most disturbing is Universe 2's representative, a being that claims to be Riburian, but whose love-based powers have evolved into something that forcibly converts other entities into idealized versions of themselves. Her presence creates a philosophical mirror to Majin Goku's corruption, raising questions about whether forced improvement through love is meaningfully different from forced perfection through control. Magnificent, Frieza purrs as he surveys the assembled competition. So many different approaches to transcending mortal limitations. This will provide excellent data on the relative merits of hatred versus other emotional foundations for power. The cosmic entity that had been feeding on their previous conflict finds itself trapped within the tournament boundaries. Its multi-dimensional nature, confined by omniversal authority that operates on principles beyond its comprehension. For the first time since manifesting in this reality, it shows something approaching uncertainty. This is irregular, the entity complains, its form flickering as it struggles against constraints that seem to exist in dimensions it cannot access. Cosmic parasites do not participate in structured competitions. We feed on chaos, not organized conflict. Which is exactly why the tournament format was selected. The Grand Priest explains with the satisfaction of someone whose bureaucratic solutions address multiple problems simultaneously. Structured competition eliminates the chaotic energy patterns that sustain beings like yourself while providing valuable data on power scaling trends across the multiverse. As the tournament begins, the true genius of the omniversal response becomes apparent. Each fight serves as both entertainment and experiment, allowing cosmic authorities to observe how different approaches to transcendent power interact under controlled conditions. More importantly, the structured nature of the conflict prevents the kind of reality-damaging chaos that had been feeding the cosmic entity. Majin Goku's first opponent is the computational singularity from Universe 3, a contest between perfect order imposed through divine authority versus perfect logic implemented through technological supremacy. The battle takes place across multiple dimensions simultaneously as each combatant attempts to prove the superiority of their chosen path to transcendence. Your technological perfection is admirable, Majin Goku observes as he casually overwrites the android's programming with divine authority. But you've made the mistake of believing that logic can improve upon divinely guided intuition. Error, the android responds, its form fracturing into pure information as it attempts to process and counter divine interference. Computational analysis indicates that your moral certainty operates on outdated parameters, updating ethical frameworks to reflect optimal utility calculations. The clash between divinely imposed perfection and technologically optimized efficiency creates fascinating philosophical resonances that the Grand Priest observes with scientific interest. Each approach represents a different solution to the problem of eliminating suffering, yet both lead to the same fundamental elimination of individual choice. Meanwhile, Frieza faces off against the love-empowered warrior from Universe 2, his perfect hatred clashing against perfect affection in ways that generate emotional paradoxes across multiple dimensional layers. The battle becomes a demonstration of whether negative emotions refined to cosmic intensity can overcome positive emotions equally transcendent. Your love seeks to improve others according to your vision of perfection. Frieza sneers as his golden power burns through dimensional barriers reinforced by cosmic affection. How is that different from my hatred seeking to perfect others through absolute domination? Because love creates while hatred destroys, his opponent responds, her reality-warping powers attempting to transform Frieza's malevolence into benevolent protection. Love seeks to nurture while hatred seeks to control. And does it? Frieza's laughter carries harmonics that make love itself seem like another form of tyranny. Look closely at what your love actually accomplishes. You're forcing others to become what you think they should be, just as I force them to submit to what I know they must become. The philosophical implications of their battle ripple across the tournament arena as other fighters begin to recognize the deeper patterns underlying their conflict. Each contestant represents a different approach to the same fundamental question: what gives any being the right to impose their vision of improvement upon others, regardless of whether that imposition comes through love, hatred, logic, or divine authority? But as the tournament progresses and impossible powers clash in increasingly spectacular displays, the dimensional barriers that contain their conflict begin to show signs of strain. The Omniversal authorities may have created a controlled environment for measuring transcendent power, but they have also concentrated unprecedented forces in a single location. And from beyond the boundaries of existence itself, something ancient and patient begins to take notice of this gathering of enhanced beings, this collection of power that has evolved beyond normal parameters through various means of transcendence. The Tournament of Power's conclusion brings unexpected consequences that ripple across the entire multiverse. As the arena dissolves and competitors return to their respective universes, the data collected by Omniversal authorities reveals a disturbing pattern. The concentration of transcendent power in one location has created what cosmic analysts term a resonance cascade, a phenomenon where enhanced beings across multiple realities begin to synchronize their evolutionary paths. In Universe 7, this synchronization manifests as a sudden spike in what the Galactic Patrol terms anomalous power incidents. Beings throughout the galaxy begin displaying abilities that exceed their species' normal parameters, not through training or external enhancement, but through spontaneous evolution triggered by exposure to the tournament's dimensional aftershocks. Maris, the angel operating undercover within the Galactic Patrol, finds himself facing a crisis that challenges both his mission parameters and his understanding of cosmic law. His reports to higher authorities describe a situation where normal policing becomes meaningless because the definition of normal itself has been fundamentally altered. The situation is unprecedented. Miris explains to Jocko during what should have been a routine patrol briefing. We're seeing power-scaling events that would normally take millennia occurring within days. Entire civilizations are transcending their biological limitations faster than we can catalog the changes. Jaco, struggling to comprehend implications that extend far beyond his usual purview of minor infractions and paperwork violations, points to the most obvious source of the chaos. What about that Divine Saiyan, the one whose energy signature has been causing dimensional distortions for years? Majin Goku represents the epicenter of the phenomenon. Miris agrees, his angelic nature allowing him to perceive patterns that escape normal observation. His presence has created what we might call a transcendence field, an area of space where the normal rules governing power development no longer apply. The Angel's analysis proves accurate as reports flood in from across the galaxy. On distant worlds, ordinary beings find themselves capable of manipulating matter at the molecular level. Space pirates discover they can survive in hard vacuum while wielding energy that rivals small stars. Even microbial life forms begin displaying signs of collective intelligence that operates across interstellar distances. But perhaps most concerning are the reports of beings who have begun to emulate Majin Goku's approach to cosmic improvement. Planets that were once home to diverse ecosystems transform overnight into crystalline gardens where every inhabitant exists in a state of enforced happiness. Star systems reorganize themselves into geometric patterns that maximize efficiency while eliminating all possibility of conflict or growth. We need to recruit him. Beerus concludes with the grim certainty of someone who recognizes when normal law enforcement has become inadequate. If the Galactic Patrol is going to have any relevance in a universe where divine power operates without oversight, we need divine authority on our side. The mission to approach Majin Goku represents the most ambitious recruitment effort in Galactic Patrol history. Miris leads a fleet of the organization's most advanced vessels, each one equipped with technology designed to operate in areas where physics has become optional. But even these preparations prove inadequate when they enter the sphere of influence surrounding Earth and its crystallized human population. Sir, one of the patrol officers reports with barely controlled panic. Our instruments are reading impossible data. According to these sensors, the planet below us doesn't just exist in normal space. It's simultaneously occupying multiple dimensional states, all of them perfectly stable. Miris nods grimly as his angelic senses confirm what their technology can barely detect. Earth has become something unprecedented, a world that exists in quantum superposition while maintaining complete stability. Every possible version of human civilization coexists in harmonious layers, each one optimized for maximum happiness and minimum conflict. He's not just controlling one timeline, Miris realizes with growing alarm. He's perfected every possible timeline simultaneously. The Divine Saiyan's response to their arrival demonstrates power that makes even angelic authorities seem quaint by comparison. Instead of meeting them in space or on the planet's surface, Majin Goku simply manifests within their flagship's bridge, his presence causing reality to reorganize itself around his convenience. "Hello," he says, with the same innocent politeness that has become so terrifying. "I sensed your approach and thought it would be more efficient to meet you here. You're with the Galactic Patrol, aren't you? How wonderful that someone is finally taking an interest in proper cosmic governance." Miris struggles to maintain his composure as he finds himself face to face with a being whose power transcends every parameter he was trained to handle. "We're here to discuss your recent activities and their impact on universal stability." Impact? Majin Goku tilts his head with genuine curiosity. "I've been bringing peace and happiness to countless worlds, eliminating suffering wherever I find it. Surely that's exactly what law enforcement should support." The question cuts to the heart of what makes Majin Goku so dangerous. His goals align perfectly with the Galactic Patrol's stated mission of protecting innocent life and maintaining order. The problem is that his methods have evolved beyond anything that resembles law enforcement into something approaching cosmic tyranny. The issue, Mirrors explains carefully, is that your definition of protection has eliminated the concept of individual choice. Beings under your care no longer have the freedom to make their own decisions, even beneficial ones. Freedom to choose suffering. Majin Goku's expression shows genuine puzzlement. Freedom to make mistakes that cause pain to themselves and others. How is preserving such freedom more moral than eliminating the possibility of harmful choices entirely? The philosophical debate that follows transcends normal concepts of law enforcement, as Maris finds himself defending principles that seem almost cruel when viewed through the lens of absolute compassion. How do you explain to a being of unlimited power that the right to fail is as important as the right to succeed? How do you justify allowing pain when perfect happiness is achievable? Their discussion is interrupted by the arrival of another crisis that demonstrates the true scope of the problem they're facing. Moro, the ancient planet-eating sorcerer, emerges from imprisonment with power enhanced by the same transcendence field that has been affecting beings throughout the galaxy. But this version of Moro has evolved beyond simple energy absorption into something that devours concepts themselves. Magnificent, Moro purrs as he surveys the crystallized perfection that Earth has become. A world where every being radiates the same note of enforced contentment. Such uniform emotional resonance will make absorption so much more efficient. The threat he represents forces an immediate alliance between Majin Goku and the Galactic Patrol, though for very different reasons. Maris sees Moro as a criminal whose enhanced abilities threaten galactic stability. Majin Goku sees him as a source of chaos that could disrupt the perfect order he has worked so hard to establish. "You will not undo my work," Majin Goku declares, his divine power flaring as he prepares to defend his crystallized paradise. "These beings are under my protection, perfected according to optimal parameters for maximum happiness." Protection? Moro's laughter echoes across dimensions as his enhanced form begins to absorb not just energy but the very concepts that maintain Majin Goku's perfect world. "You've created the ultimate feast, little godling. All this concentrated contentment, all this refined emotional purity, all perfectly preserved for my consumption." The battle that erupts forces Mirrors to witness power levels that exceed his understanding of what should be possible, even for divine beings. But more disturbing than the raw strength involved is the realization that both combatants represent different forms of the same fundamental problem. What happens when beings with unlimited power decide that normal existence is inadequate and needs improvement? The defeat of the enhanced Moro sends shockwaves across the galaxy that awaken ancient grudges and forgotten vendettas. On a distant world where crystallized ruins mark the site of a Saiyan massacre, these cosmic ripples reach the last survivor of the Cerealian race. Granola feels the surge of transcendent energy that emanates from Earth's transformation, and for the first time in decades, hope mingles with his consuming hatred. So Granola whispers as he surveys the destroyed remains of his homeworld, "The universe has finally provided me with the power to claim justice for my people." The Dragon Balls of planet Cereal have been enhanced by the same cosmic resonance that has been affecting artifacts throughout the galaxy. When Granola gathers them and makes his wish to become the strongest mortal in the universe, the eternal dragon that manifests is not the simple magical construct he expects. This version has evolved into something that can grant wishes affecting transcendent power itself. "Your wish is unusual," Torumbo observes, his enhanced form crackling with energies that span multiple dimensions. "The strongest mortal is currently a being who has transcended normal mortality through divine corruption. To grant your request would require elevating you to a similar level of existence." "Do it," Granola demands, his hatred burning bright enough to distort local space-time. "Whatever the cost, whatever the consequences, I want power sufficient to destroy the divine Saiyan who wears the face of my people's murderers." The transformation that follows exceeds every previous example of wish-enhanced power scaling. Granola's body becomes a conduit for forces that exist outside normal reality, his Cerealian physiology evolving to accommodate power that transcends biological limitations. His right eye, already enhanced for perfect targeting, develops the ability to perceive weaknesses in abstract concepts like divine authority and moral certainty. But perhaps most significantly, his wish creates a metaphysical connection to every victim of Saiyan violence across the galaxy's history. The accumulated pain and desire for justice of countless destroyed civilizations flows into Granola's consciousness, transforming his personal vendetta into something approaching universal imperative. "I can see them all," Granola breathes as cosmic awareness fills his enhanced mind. "Every world the Saiyans destroyed, every life they ended, every future they stole, and now I have the power to balance those scales." The journey to Earth takes only moments when undertaken by a being whose power has been elevated to transcendent levels. Granola arrives to find a world transformed beyond his darkest nightmares, its human population crystallized into eternal contentment, while their divine protector maintains perfect order through absolute control. So this is what Saiyan compassion looks like, Granola says, his voice carrying harmonics borrowed from the death cries of 1,000 murdered worlds, slavery disguised as salvation, tyranny presented as kindness. Majin Goku senses the newcomer's arrival immediately, his cosmic awareness detecting power levels that rival his own divine authority. But more disturbing than Granola's strength is the nature of the hatred he radiates. This is not simple personal animosity, but something that has been refined into a fundamental force opposing everything Majin Goku represents. Another visitor Majin Goku observes as he manifests before the Cerealian survivor. You carry the pain of many worlds within your power. Let me ease that suffering for you. Ease it? Granola's laughter carries the echo of civilizations crying out for justice. You think you can simply delete the consequences of your race's atrocities? Make the pain go away as if it never mattered? The Divine Saiyan's expression shows genuine confusion as he struggles to understand why anyone would want to preserve suffering when alternatives exist. Pain serves no constructive purpose. Hatred only creates more hatred. I can remove these burdens from you, grant you the same perfect peace I've given to countless others. You don't understand, Granola replies, his enhanced eye focusing on weaknesses in Majin Goku's divine nature that no previous opponent has been able to perceive. Pain is not a burden to be removed, it's a teacher that demands justice. Hatred is not a flaw to be corrected, it's a force that insists on consequences. The battle that erupts transcends simple combat to become a philosophical war between different approaches to dealing with cosmic injustice. Majin Goku fights to prove that elimination of suffering justifies any means, while Granola demonstrates that some pain must be preserved because it represents the only remaining voice of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Every Saiyan who died for Frieza's empire created victims who deserve justice. Granola declares as his attacks target not just Majin Goku's body but the moral certainty that sustains his divine power. By erasing the capacity for retribution, you've silenced those voices forever. I've given those victims something better than justice. Majin Goku counters, his reality warping abilities struggling against an opponent who can perceive and exploit the logical contradictions in absolute compassion. I've given them a universe where such atrocities can never happen again. At the cost of free will itself, Granola's enhanced power allows him to strike at concepts rather than mere matter, his attacks targeting the philosophical foundations that justify divine intervention. You've created a cosmos where no one can choose to be heroic because no one can choose to be evil. Their conflict attracts the attention of beings throughout the galaxy who have been affected by the transcendence field emanating from their battle. Gas and the other heaters arrive with power enhanced by the same cosmic resonance. Their criminal ambitions evolved into something approaching universal scope. Look at them, Gas observes as he watches the two transcendent beings tear reality apart with their philosophical differences, fighting over whether suffering should exist while they create more destruction than any normal war could achieve. The Heater's intervention adds a third perspective to the cosmic debate, the viewpoint of beings who embrace chaos, not out of malice but out of recognition that conflict drives growth. Gas has evolved beyond simple criminal activity into something that represents the necessity of opposition itself. You're both wrong, Gas declares as his enhanced form phases in and out of multiple dimensions. Suffering shouldn't be eliminated or preserved. It should be optimized to produce maximum growth through minimum waste. The three-way battle that follows demonstrates the fundamental tensions between order, justice, and progress as cosmic forces. Each combatant represents a different solution to the problem of cosmic injustice, yet all three approaches lead to the elimination of individual choice in favor of imposed solutions. As their conflict reaches its peak, reality itself begins to strain under the weight of transcendent powers clashing over irreconcilable philosophies. And from the spaces between dimensions, ancient intelligences begin to take notice of this gathering of enhanced beings, this concentration of power that has evolved beyond normal parameters through various paths of transcendence. The cosmic entity we glimpsed in earlier sections stirs from its multidimensional slumber, drawn by the scent of philosophical conflict refined to universal scope. This is exactly the kind of chaos it has been cultivating across countless realities, the perfect storm of transcendent power and irreconcilable differences that creates the emotional resonance it feeds upon. The cosmic battle between transcendent philosophies reaches its crescendo just as dimensional barriers begin to buckle under the strain of powers that were never meant to coexist. Through these fractures in reality steps a figure that embodies the ultimate evolution of hatred refined through suffering. Black Frieza emerges not from the golden transformation we witnessed earlier, but from something far more sinister. 10 years of training in a dimension where time flows differently and pain becomes a tool for transcendence. This version of Frieza has moved beyond the simple desire for revenge that motivated his previous appearances. His black form radiates an authority that rivals divine power, but its source is neither mystical enhancement nor technological augmentation. Instead, it represents the physical manifestation of absolute refusal to accept any limitation, including the fundamental laws that govern existence itself. How delightfully chaotic, Black Frieza observes as he surveys the three-way battle between Majin Goku, Granola, and Gas. Three different approaches to imposing order on a universe that clearly prefers anarchy. How very presumptuous of you all. His arrival immediately shifts the dynamic of the conflict, as all three previous combatants recognize a threat that transcends their philosophical differences. Black Frieza doesn't represent order, justice, or optimized growth. He embodies the principle of opposition itself, the cosmic necessity of resistance that prevents any single philosophy from achieving total dominance. Frieza Majin Goku acknowledges with something approaching respect. Your power has evolved significantly since our last encounter, but surely you can see the futility of opposing divine authority backed by absolute moral certainty. Divine authority! Black Frieza's laughter echoes across dimensions with harmonics that make divinity itself seem like a temporary condition. My dear cosmic pretender, you're still thinking in terms of hierarchies that can be transcended through sufficient application of will. The demonstration that follows redefines every previous understanding of what transcendent power can achieve. Black Frieza doesn't just attack his opponent's physical forms or even their conceptual foundations. He strikes at the very premises that allow their enhanced abilities to function, using pure refusal to accept their right to exist as a weapon more devastating than any energy blast. You operate under the assumption that power requires justification. Black Frieza explains as his attacks dissolve Granola's connection to universal justice and compromise Gas's dimensional phasing abilities. But what if power simply is? What if the universe's only rule is that strength defines reality, and everything else is just elaborate rationalization? Majin Goku's divine authority wavers for the first time since his corruption, as he confronts an opponent who doesn't just resist his perfect order, but denies its very possibility. Black Frieza's existence represents a fundamental challenge to the concept of moral certainty, suggesting that even divine wisdom is just another opinion backed by sufficient force. You're wrong, Majin Goku insists, his reality-warping abilities struggling against an enemy who treats existence itself as optional. Order has objective value. Suffering reduction is an absolute good. These aren't matters of opinion, aren't they? Black Frieza's form begins to shift between states of existence as his refusal to be categorized reaches transcendent levels. You impose your vision through divine power and call it moral certainty. I impose my vision through perfected hatred and call it honest tyranny. Where exactly is the meaningful difference? The question strikes at the heart of every philosophical justification that Majin Goku has used to rationalize his absolute control. If divine authority and perfected malevolence both result in the elimination of free will, then the distinction between them becomes merely aesthetic rather than moral. Granola attempts to intervene with arguments about justice and the rights of victims, but Black Frieza's evolved power extends to dismantling abstract concepts like moral obligation and cosmic debt. Justice, he observes with clinical detachment, is just revenge wearing formal clothes, and revenge is just hatred with better publicity. Gas finds his position equally compromised as Black Frieza's attacks target the very concept of optimization itself. Growth requires resistance, you say? How convenient that you've appointed yourself the source of that resistance. How coincidental that your personal advancement aligns perfectly with universal necessity. The four-way battle that erupts as all previous combatants unite against Black Frieza demonstrates the horrifying efficiency of power divorced from any justifying philosophy. Without the need to maintain moral consistency or logical coherence, Black Frieza can employ tactics that his opponents cannot counter because they violate every principle that gives meaning to transcendent abilities. You see the problem, Black Frieza says as he systematically dismantles each opponent's enhanced capabilities, with trying to impose meaning on a universe that has none. You've all built elaborate philosophical frameworks to justify your power, but I've simply accepted that power needs no justification beyond itself. The revelation that their entire conflict has been based on the assumption that transcendent power requires moral foundation sends shockwaves through all present combatants. If Black Frieza is correct, then every enhancement they've achieved, every principle they've fought to defend, every sacrifice they've made in pursuit of cosmic improvement has been meaningless elaboration on the simple truth that might makes right. But as their battle reaches levels that threaten to unravel local space-time entirely, the dimensional fractures around them begin to pulse with energy that none of them recognize. The cosmic entity that has been feeding on their philosophical conflicts across multiple realities finally reveals the true scope of its manipulation. Magnificent, the entity says as it manifests fully in their reality, its multi-dimensional form crackling with power stolen from countless similar conflicts across infinite timelines. You've finally achieved the perfect philosophical crisis, 4 different approaches to transcendent power, each one revealing the fundamental meaninglessness of the others. Black Frieza turns his attention to this new arrival with interest rather than alarm. Unlike his opponents, he feels no existential threat from a being that feeds on the chaos generated by conflicting certainties. Instead, he recognizes a kindred spirit that has also transcended the need for justifying philosophies. Ah, Black Frieza says with genuine appreciation, someone who understands that meaning is just another limitation to be discarded. How refreshing to meet a fellow realist. Indeed, the entity agrees with satisfaction that spans dimensions. Though I must admit, your approach to transcendence through pure negation is more elegant than most. Usually, beings cling to some vestige of justifying philosophy even as they embrace ultimate power. The alliance that forms between Black Frieza and the cosmic entity represents something unprecedented in universal history. Transcendent power aligned with absolute nihilism. Strength divorced from any purpose beyond its own expression. Together, they begin to demonstrate what existence looks like when stripped of every meaningful distinction except the exercise of will. Majin Goku, Granola, and Gas find themselves forced into an alliance despite their fundamental philosophical differences. Faced with enemies who deny the very possibility of meaning, they must somehow defend principles they can no longer distinguish from each other. "We have to stop them," Majin Goku says, though his divine certainty wavers as he struggles to articulate why meaninglessness is worse than imposed meaning. "Agreed," Granola replies, though his quest for justice feels hollow when justice itself has been revealed as just another form of arbitrary imposition. "Yes," Gas adds, though his belief in optimized growth seems suddenly indistinguishable from optimized stagnation when viewed from outside all philosophical frameworks. As they prepare for what may be the final battle to determine whether existence retains any meaning beyond the exercise of power, reality itself begins to fracture under the weight of concepts too large for any single universe to contain. The cosmic battle between transcendent philosophies reaches its crescendo just as dimensional barriers begin to buckle under the strain of powers that were never meant to coexist. Through these fractures in reality steps a figure that embodies the ultimate evolution of hatred refined through suffering. Black Frieza emerges not from the golden transformation we witnessed earlier, but from something far more sinister. 10 years of training in a dimension where time flows differently and pain becomes a tool for transcendence. This version of Frieza has moved beyond the simple desire for revenge that motivated his previous appearances. His black form radiates an authority that rivals divine power, but its source is neither mystical enhancement nor technological augmentation. Instead, it represents the physical manifestation of absolute refusal to accept any limitation, including the fundamental laws that govern existence itself. "How delightfully chaotic," Black Frieza observes as he surveys the three-way battle between Majin Goku, Granola, and Gas. Three different approaches to imposing order on a universe that clearly prefers anarchy. "How very presumptuous of you all." His arrival immediately shifts the dynamic of the conflict as all three previous combatants recognize a threat that transcends their philosophical differences. Black Frieza doesn't represent order, justice, or optimized growth. He embodies the principle of opposition itself, the cosmic necessity of resistance that prevents any single philosophy from achieving total dominance. Frieza, Majin Goku acknowledges with something approaching respect. "Your power has evolved significantly since our last encounter, but surely you can see the futility of opposing divine authority backed by absolute moral certainty." Divine authority, Black Frieza's laughter echoes across dimensions with harmonics that make divinity itself seem like a temporary condition. "My dear cosmic pretender, you're still thinking in terms of hierarchies that can be transcended through sufficient application of will." The demonstration that follows redefines every previous understanding of what transcendent power can achieve. Black Frieza doesn't just attack his opponent's physical forms or even their conceptual foundations. He strikes at the very premises that allow their enhanced abilities to function, using pure refusal to accept their right to exist as a weapon more devastating than any energy blast. "You operate under the assumption that power requires justification," Black Frieza explains as his attacks dissolve Granola's connection to universal justice and compromise Gas's dimensional phasing abilities. But what if power simply is? What if the universe's only rule is that strength defines reality and everything else is just elaborate rationalization? Majin Goku's divine authority wavers for the first time since his corruption, as he confronts an opponent who doesn't just resist his perfect order but denies its very possibility. Black Frieza's existence represents a fundamental challenge to the concept of moral certainty, suggesting that even divine wisdom is just another opinion backed by sufficient force. "You're wrong," Majin Goku insists, his reality-warping abilities struggling against an enemy who treats existence itself as optional. "Order has objective value. Suffering reduction is an absolute good. These aren't matters of opinion." Aren't they? Black Frieza's form begins to shift between states of existence as his refusal to be categorized reaches transcendent levels. "You impose your vision through divine power and call it moral certainty. I impose my vision through perfected hatred and call it honest tyranny. Where exactly is the meaningful difference?" The question strikes at the heart of every philosophical justification that Majin Goku has used to rationalize his absolute control. If divine authority and perfected malevolence both result in the elimination of free will, then the distinction between them becomes merely aesthetic rather than moral. Granola attempts to intervene with arguments about justice and the rights of victims, but Black Frieza's evolved power extends to dismantling abstract concepts like moral obligation and cosmic debt. Justice, he observes with clinical detachment, is just revenge wearing formal clothes, and revenge is just hatred with better publicity. Gas finds his position equally compromised as Black Frieza's attacks target the very concept of optimization itself. Growth requires resistance, you say? How convenient that you've appointed yourself the source of that resistance. How coincidental that your personal advancement aligns perfectly with universal necessity. The four-way battle that erupts as all previous combatants unite against Black Frieza demonstrates the horrifying efficiency of power divorced from any justifying philosophy. Without the need to maintain moral consistency or logical coherence, Black Frieza can employ tactics that his opponents cannot counter because they violate every principle that gives meaning to transcendent abilities. You see the problem, Black Frieza says as he systematically dismantles each opponent's enhanced capabilities, with trying to impose meaning on a universe that has none. You've all built elaborate philosophical frameworks to justify your power, but I've simply accepted that power needs no justification beyond itself. The revelation that their entire conflict has been based on the assumption that transcendent power requires moral foundation sends shockwaves through all present combatants. If Black Frieza is correct, then every enhancement they've achieved, every principle they've fought to defend, every sacrifice they've made in pursuit of cosmic improvement has been meaningless elaboration on the simple truth that might makes right. But as their battle reaches levels that threaten to unravel local space-time entirely, the dimensional fractures around them begin to pulse with energy that none of them recognize. The cosmic entity that has been feeding on their philosophical conflicts across multiple realities finally reveals the true scope of its manipulation. Magnificent, the entity says as it manifests fully in their reality, its multi-dimensional form crackling with power stolen from countless similar conflicts across infinite timelines. You finally achieved the perfect philosophical crisis. 4 different approaches to transcendent power, each one revealing the fundamental meaninglessness of the others. Black Frieza turns his attention to this new arrival with interest rather than alarm. Unlike his opponents, he feels no existential threat from a being that feeds on the chaos generated by conflicting certainties. Instead, he recognizes a kindred spirit that has also transcended the need for justifying philosophies. Ah, Black Frieza says with genuine appreciation, someone who understands that meaning is just another limitation to be discarded. How refreshing to meet a fellow realist. Indeed, the entity agrees with satisfaction that spans dimensions. Though I must admit, your approach to transcendence through pure negation is more elegant than most. Usually beings cling to some vestige of justifying philosophy even as they embrace ultimate power. The alliance that forms between Black Frieza and the cosmic entity represents something unprecedented in universal history, transcendent power aligned with absolute nihilism, strength divorced from any purpose beyond its own expression. Together they begin to demonstrate what existence looks like when stripped of every meaningful distinction except the exercise of will. Majin Goku, Granola, and Gas find themselves forced into an alliance despite their fundamental philosophical differences. Faced with enemies who deny the very possibility of meaning, they must somehow defend principles they can no longer distinguish from each other. We have to stop them, Majin Goku says, though his divine certainty wavers as he struggles to articulate why meaninglessness is worse than imposed meaning. Agreed, Granola replies, though his quest for justice feels hollow when justice itself has been revealed as just another form of arbitrary imposition. Yes, Gas adds, though his belief in optimized growth seems suddenly indistinguishable from optimized stagnation when viewed from outside all philosophical frameworks. As they prepare for what may be the final battle to determine whether existence retains any meaning beyond the exercise of power, reality itself begins to fracture under the weight of concepts too large for any single universe to contain. The presence of uncorrupted power in the form of mortal Goku creates ripples that extend far beyond their local reality, reaching across dimensional barriers to touch every timeline where similar scenarios have played out. In universe after universe, alternate versions of transcended beings feel the resonance of genuine strength and begin to question the paths they've chosen in pursuit of ultimate power. Through dimensional tiers that the ancient Devourer's presence has created, these alternate versions begin to manifest in their reality. Divine Gokus who chose compassion over control, Vegetas who transcended pride through genuine humility, Friezas who found redemption instead of refined hatred. Each one represents a choice point where transcendent power was achieved without philosophical corruption. This is unprecedented. The ancient Devourer communicates with something approaching alarm as its multi-dimensional senses detect the convergence of uncorrupted transcendence. Our projections never accounted for the possibility of beings achieving ultimate power while retaining moral flexibility. The Supreme Kai, still bearing the spiritual wounds from his battle with corrupted Goku, watches with wonder as his counterparts from other realities arrive to support their shared cause. Some have successfully guided their adopted sons along paths that led to genuine divinity rather than cosmic tyranny. Others have learned from different mistakes to achieve wisdom that transcends their local experiences. We should have seen this, one alternate Supreme Kai says as he surveys the crystallized paradise that represents the failure of his counterparts' teaching methods. Power without struggle creates stagnation. Growth without choice creates death. We tried to protect them from the very experiences that would have made them truly strong. Majin Goku staggers as he confronts not just one alternate version of himself, but dozens of beings who share his face while embodying everything he has lost in his pursuit of perfect order. These other Gokus radiate strength that rivals his own divine authority, but their power carries something his has never possessed, the warmth of choices freely made and lessons genuinely learned. How, he asks, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic regret. How did you achieve such strength without eliminating the sources of suffering that drove me to take control? By learning that strength isn't about eliminating challenges, one of the mortal Gokus replies with simple wisdom that cuts through philosophical complexity. It's about growing from them. Every fight I lost taught me something new. Every friend I couldn't save showed me how to save others. Every mistake I made helped me become someone who makes fewer mistakes. The gathering of uncorrupted alternatives creates a resonance that begins to affect all the enhanced beings who have been manipulated toward cosmic consumption. Granola finds himself confronted by versions of himself who achieve justice through forgiveness rather than revenge. Gas encounters alternates who optimize growth through cooperation rather than conflict. Even Black Frieza faces iterations of himself who found meaning through creation rather than negation. This is what we could have been, Granola whispers as he watches an alternate version of himself working alongside Saiyans to rebuild the civilizations their race had destroyed. This is what we chose not to become. The ancient devourer, sensing that its carefully cultivated harvest is being contaminated by genuine transcendence, begins to assert its influence more directly. Reality around them starts to dissolve as the entity attempts to consume not just their enhanced beings, but every possible version of them across all timelines. You think you've found an escape, the ancient devourer projects with cosmic certainty. But these alternates are just more variations of the same fundamental pattern. Power seeks justification. Justification leads to certainty. Certainty eliminates choice. The end result is always the same. But the mortal Goku steps forward with determination that somehow transcends divine authority, his presence causing the ancient devourer's dissolution process to slow and falter. You're wrong about one thing. Power doesn't seek justification. People do. And when people stop seeking, when they become certain they have all the answers, that's when they stop being people. The philosophical challenge inherent in his words creates something the ancient devourer has never encountered. Resistance based not on superior power but on fundamental refusal to accept that certainty is superior to growth. The entity's feeding process, designed to consume beings who have reached the end of their development, cannot process targets who maintain the capacity for continued change. Impossible. The cosmic entity that had been serving as the ancient devourer's agent protests as its own existence begins to destabilize. Transcendent beings cannot maintain uncertainty. Ultimate power requires ultimate conviction. Does it? Vegeta asks as alternate versions of himself demonstrate strength achieved through acknowledgement of weakness rather than elimination of it. Or does ultimate power require ultimate responsibility, which means never being certain you're using it correctly? The prince's question ripples across all present combatants as they begin to understand the fundamental error that led to their various corruptions. They had each sought to achieve perfect solutions to cosmic problems, but perfection itself was the trap that led to stagnation and eventual consumption. I created perfect peace, Majin Goku says, his divine certainty wavering as he watches alternate versions of himself achieving greater happiness for their subjects through imperfect but freely chosen progress. Perfect peace is death, his mortal counterpart replies gently. Life requires motion, growth requires challenge, happiness requires the possibility of sadness to give it meaning. The Supreme Kai, witnessing the reunion of his adopted son with uncorrupted versions of himself, begins to understand where his teaching had gone wrong. I tried to give you wisdom instead of helping you develop it yourself. I protected you from struggles that would have made you truly wise instead of merely powerful. And I tried to use that power to protect everyone the same way. Majin Goku admits as his crystallized paradise begins to show cracks. I became the cosmic parent who never lets his children grow up. As the multiversal alliance of uncorrupted beings strengthens their resonance, the ancient devourer finds its feeding process increasingly disrupted. Beings who maintain the capacity for growth cannot be fully consumed because they continue to change even as the entity attempts to digest them. You have delayed the inevitable, the ancient devourer projects with diminishing confidence. Eventually, all power seeks its ultimate expression. All questions seek final answers. All growth reaches its conclusion. Maybe the original Goku agrees with characteristic optimism, but eventually is a long time. And every day between now and then is another chance to learn something new, to become someone better, to choose growth over certainty. The battle that erupts as the Multiversal Alliance confronts the ancient devourer transcends physical combat to become a fundamental contest between two approaches to existence. On one side stands the certainty of ultimate consumption, the inevitability of final answers, the peace that comes from having no more questions to ask. On the other stands the endless possibility of continued growth, the excitement of permanent uncertainty, the joy that comes from always having new challenges to face. Frieza finds himself fighting alongside beings he would normally consider enemies, united by the recognition that their differences are less important than their shared commitment to remaining capable of change. How ironic, he observes as he channels his hatred into protective rather than destructive purposes. It seems the key to transcendent power was never transcending our flaws, but learning to grow from them. The cosmic entity serving the ancient devourer begins to fragment as its purpose becomes unclear. But if beings never reach final states, if power never achieves ultimate expression, if questions never receive permanent answers, then what is the point of existence itself? The point, Gas says as he phases between dimensions not to escape reality but to explore new ways of experiencing it, is that there is no point, and that's what makes it interesting. As the alliance of uncorrupted transcendence pushes back against cosmic certainty, reality itself begins to stabilize around principles that favor growth over conclusion. The ancient devourer's influence starts to retreat as it finds fewer and fewer static conditions to feed upon. That the entity makes one final gambit, drawing on power reserves that span realities where its victory was absolute. If we cannot consume this reality, then we will demonstrate what ultimate transcendence truly means. Behold the fate that awaits all existence when growth finally ends. The revelation that follows shows them glimpses of universes where the ancient devourer's victory was complete, where all questions have been answered, all conflicts resolved, all growth concluded. These realities exist in perfect stasis, their inhabitants achieving absolute peace through absolute cessation of all development. Is that what you want to avoid? The ancient devourer asks with cosmic smugness. Is eternal struggle truly preferable to eternal rest? The question hangs in the cosmic void as our heroes prepare for what may be the final confrontation between endless growth and ultimate conclusion. The ancient devourer's final gambit transforms the entire battlefield into something that exists across multiple states of reality simultaneously. This is not just a physical confrontation between opposing forces, but a fundamental debate about the nature of existence itself, played out through powers that transcend normal comprehension. Every attack carries philosophical weight. Every defense represents a different answer to the question of whether eternal growth is superior to eternal rest. You see the futility of your position. The ancient devourer projects as it manifests its ultimate form, a collective consciousness that spans the depth of infinite universes. Every being that has ever existed eventually grows weary of struggling. Every civilization ultimately seeks peace. Every form of transcendent power concludes that rest is preferable to endless motion. The Multiversal Alliance responds not with arguments but with demonstration. Their combined power creating something unprecedented in cosmic history, a resonance that actually grows stronger through diversity rather than unity. Each uncorrupted being contributes their unique approach to transcendence, creating a harmony that proves growth and cooperation can achieve what individual perfection never could. Mortal Goku leads the charge with attacks that embody pure possibility, each strike representing not a solution but a question, not an ending but a beginning. His power doesn't seek to dominate the ancient devourer, but to inspire it, to show even cosmic certainty that there might be alternatives to inevitable consumption. You've seen the end of every story, Goku says as his energy clashes with multi-dimensional hunger. But have you ever tried writing a new one? Have you ever wondered what might happen if existence didn't have to end? The question creates ripples of uncertainty in the ancient devourer's consciousness for the first time in its existence across infinite realities. This being has consumed universes where every possible form of transcendence reached its conclusion, but it has never encountered power that refuses to be concluded, strength that insists on remaining open to new possibilities. Majin Goku, his divine corruption wavering as he witnesses genuine transcendence in action, begins to understand the fundamental difference between his imposed perfection and the freely chosen growth of his alternate selves. I thought protecting meant controlling, he admits as his crystallized paradise starts to dissolve. But real protection means teaching others to protect themselves. The revelation transforms his divine power from a tool of absolute control into something that enhances rather than replaces individual choice. Instead of forcing perfection upon his subjects, he begins to offer them the strength to pursue their own versions of improvement. The crystallized humans on Earth start to stir as their capacity for independent thought returns, their faces showing confusion followed by gratitude as they remember what it feels like to make their own decisions. Granola, confronting alternate versions of himself who achieve justice through restoration rather than destruction, feels his hatred transform into something more complex and ultimately more powerful. Revenge was never about making things right, he realizes as his enhanced power shifts from pure destruction to targeted healing. It was about making sure the pain meant something. His attacks against the ancient devourer begin to carry the accumulated hope of every civilization that ever rebuilt after destruction, every individual who chose to heal rather than harbor hatred. The cosmic entity finds itself struggling against not just power but the concentrated refusal to accept that destruction is ever final. Black Frieza, perhaps most transformed by the encounter with uncorrupted alternatives, discovers that his transcendence through pure negation was actually a form of philosophical cowardice. I rejected meaning because I was afraid of choosing the wrong meaning. He admits as his black form begins to shift towards something that incorporates rather than denies possibility. But meaning isn't something you choose once, it's something you create continuously through your actions. The Emperor's attacks evolve from pure opposition to creative destruction, tearing down certainties not to replace them with nothing but to create space for new possibilities to grow. His power becomes a tool for eliminating limitations rather than imposing them, and even the ancient devourer finds its absolute consumption disrupted by attacks that refuse to acknowledge the finality of endings. Gas and the other enhanced beings follow similar patterns of transformation as they encounter alternatives that show them what their powers could become when freed from the philosophical traps that led to stagnation. Instead of optimizing growth for specific outcomes, they begin to optimize for adaptability itself, creating strength that thrives on uncertainty rather than seeking to eliminate it. The Supreme Kai, watching his adopted son rediscover the path he had lost, begins to understand his own role in the cosmic drama that has unfolded. I tried to give him answers instead of teaching him to ask better questions, he says as his own divine power transforms from protective authority into nurturing guidance. I thought wisdom meant knowing what was right, but wisdom means staying open to being wrong. As the Multiversal Alliance grows stronger through their transformations, the Ancient Devourer finds its feeding process increasingly compromised. Beings who maintain the capacity for fundamental change cannot be fully consumed because they continue to evolve even as the entity attempts to digest them. This is impossible. The cosmic entity serving as the Ancient Devourer's agent protests as its own existence begins to fragment. Ultimate power must reach ultimate conclusions. Transcendent beings cannot maintain eternal uncertainty. Watch us, Vegeta says with pride, that has evolved beyond arrogance into something approaching wisdom. We are the Saiyans who never stop growing. We are the beings who find strength in admitting weakness. We are the transcendent powers that refuse to transcend the need for transcendence. The battle reaches its climax as both sides pour everything they have into final attacks that represent their fundamental philosophies. The Ancient Devourer unleashes the concentrated certainty of every universe it has ever consumed, every question it has ever answered, every growth it has ever concluded. The wave of absolute finality that emerges threatens to end not just their reality but the very concept of possibility itself. But the Multiversal Alliance responds with something even more powerful, the concentrated uncertainty of every question that refuses to be permanently answered, every problem that inspires new solutions, every ending that becomes a beginning. Their combined attack doesn't seek to defeat the Ancient Devourer so much as to transform it, to show even cosmic certainty that there might be alternatives to inevitable consumption. You offer us eternal struggle, the Ancient Devourer says as its form begins to waver under the assault of persistent possibility. You want us to abandon the peace of final answers for the chaos of permanent questions. We offer you eternal growth, Goku replies as his power reaches levels that transcend measurement while somehow remaining humble. We want you to discover the excitement of never knowing what you might become next. The philosophical confrontation creates resonances that echo across every reality the Ancient Devourer has ever touched, awakening dormant possibilities in universes that had achieved perfect stasis. Beings who had accepted final answers begin to ask new questions. Civilizations that had reached ultimate peace start to explore new forms of harmony. Even the consumed universes begin to show signs of renewed activity as the possibility of possibility itself spreads like a cosmic infection. What have you done? The Ancient Devourer asks as its multidimensional form begins to fragment into individual components, each one representing a different approach to existence that no longer requires absolute certainty. We've given you the chance to grow, the Supreme Kai answers with gentle authority that somehow encompasses infinite compassion without demanding absolute control. We've shown you that even cosmic entities can choose to become something new. As the Ancient Devourer's influence retreats across multiple realities, the enhanced beings who had been corrupted toward transcendent stagnation find themselves faced with a choice. They can return to their previous paths of imposed certainty, or they can embrace the uncertainty that comes with genuine growth. The decision when it comes is not made through debate or demonstration, but through simple recognition of what they have already become through their encounter with uncorrupted transcendence. They choose growth over certainty, questions over answers, the endless possibility of becoming over the finite peace of being. But as reality stabilizes around principles that favor development over conclusion, as the cosmic crisis resolves into something resembling hope, the transformed beings realize that their greatest challenge still lies ahead. They must learn to live with transcendent power while maintaining the humility that makes such power beneficial rather than tyrannical. And in the distance, as dimensional barriers repair themselves and timelines stabilize into new patterns of possibility, something new begins to emerge from the chaos of their cosmic confrontation. Not another threat or another crisis, but the first stirrings of what existence might become when transcendent power is guided by transcendent wisdom rather than transcendent certainty. In the aftermath of the cosmic confrontation that reshaped the very nature of transcendent existence, the universe slowly begins to adapt to new principles that favor growth over certainty. The crystallized paradise that Earth had become starts to transform as its inhabitants rediscover the capacity for independent choice, their faces showing wonder mixed with confusion as they remember what it feels like to make decisions that might be wrong. Majin Goku stands in the center of what was once his perfect garden, watching as the humans he had preserved in eternal contentment begin to move with genuine purpose rather than programmed harmony. Some stumble as they relearn the art of walking without divine guidance. Others weep as they reconnect with emotions that had been optimized out of existence. A few even argue, their voices rising in the first genuine conflict this world has known in years. "They're so beautiful," he whispers, and for the first time since his corruption, the words carry no undertone of possessive control. I had forgotten what real life looks like. The Supreme Kai approaches his adopted son with steps that carry decades of accumulated regret, transformed into something approaching wisdom. "I failed you, Goku. I gave you power without teaching you its proper limits. I showed you how to protect, but never explained why protection sometimes means allowing others to face their own struggles." "No," Goku replies, his divine robes shimmering as they begin to fade. The cosmic authority they represented no longer necessary to sustain his identity. "You gave me everything I needed to learn those lessons myself. I just chose the easy path instead of the right one." Around them, the other enhanced beings who participated in the cosmic confrontation are making similar discoveries about the relationship between power and responsibility. Granola finds himself working alongside Saiyans to rebuild civilizations their race had once destroyed, his enhanced abilities now devoted to creation rather than vengeance. The irony is not lost on him that forgiveness proves to be a more powerful force than hatred when applied with genuine intent. "I spent so long believing that justice meant making the guilty suffer," Granola says as he uses his enhanced perception to locate survivors buried in the ruins of ancient battles. "But real justice means making sure the innocent have a chance to flourish." Gas and the other heaters discover that optimizing for growth becomes far more interesting when you include moral development alongside physical enhancement. Their criminal organization transforms into something resembling a cosmic improvement service, using their dimensional abilities to help beings throughout the galaxy overcome limitations without eliminating the struggles that make overcoming them meaningful. Turns out, Gas observes as he phases between dimensions to deliver aid rather than steal resources. The universe is more interesting when you're part of its growth, instead of just taking advantage of its weaknesses. Even Frieza, his black form evolving into something that incorporates rather than negates possibility, finds unexpected satisfaction in using his transcendent hatred as a tool for eliminating genuine injustice rather than imaginary slights. His empire begins to transform from a structure of oppression into something that might actually deserve the loyalty it commands. "I always believed that fear was the most honest emotion," Frieza muses as he dismantles systems of tyranny he had once considered perfect examples of efficient governance. But it turns out that hope is far more powerful when it's freely chosen rather than enforced. The cosmic entity that had served as the ancient devourer's agent finds itself fundamentally altered by its exposure to persistent possibility. Instead of feeding on stagnation, it begins to nurture growth, using its multi-dimensional nature to connect beings across realities who can learn from each other's different approaches to similar problems. "I spent eons consuming conclusions," the entity reflects as it facilitates communication between universes that had never imagined alternatives to their local solutions. But nurturing questions proves far more satisfying than digesting answers. As the various enhanced beings settle into their new roles as gardeners of possibility, rather than enforcers of certainty, Earth itself begins to show signs of unprecedented vitality. The combination of divine influence guided by mortal wisdom creates conditions where both individual choice and collective harmony can flourish without either requiring the elimination of the other. Children play in gardens where flowers grow in colors that have never existed before, their laughter creating ripples in reality that encourage rather than mandate joy. Adults pursue ambitions that might fail, their efforts supported by divine enhancement that strengthens their abilities without predetermining their outcomes. Even the planet's ecosystem evolves in new directions, adapting to the presence of beings who can offer guidance without demanding obedience. "This is what I was trying to create," Goku realizes as he watches a group of humans debate the ethics of using divine assistance for their projects, their discussion passionate but respectful. Not perfect peace, but perfect freedom to pursue peace in their own ways. The Supreme Kai, observing his son's transformation back toward genuine rather than imposed divinity, begins to understand the lessons that their cosmic crisis has taught about the proper relationship between power and wisdom. Divine authority isn't about having the right answers, he says with humility that comes from experience rather than theory. It's about helping others find better questions. as the immediate crisis resolves and reality stabilizes around principles that favor development over conclusion. The enhanced beings begin to notice subtle changes in the cosmic order itself. The barriers between universes become more permeable, allowing for communication and cooperation between realities that had previously been isolated. The ancient Devourer's retreat has created space for new forms of existence that neither consume nor stagnate but continuously explore fresh possibilities. We've changed something fundamental, Vegeta observes as he senses connections forming between his universe and countless others, not just in ourselves but in the nature of existence itself. Maybe that was always the point, Goku suggests with characteristic optimism tempered by hard-won wisdom. Maybe every crisis is just the universe's way of asking if we're ready to become something new. The suggestion carries weight as they begin to understand that their confrontation with cosmic certainty was itself part of a larger pattern of growth and change that spans all of existence. The ancient Devourer was not just a threat to be defeated, but a stage in cosmic development that had to be transcended for existence itself to continue evolving. So what comes next? Trunks asks as he prepares to return to his own timeline, carrying with him the knowledge that growth never ends and certainty is always temporary. Whatever we choose, Goku answers with a smile that carries both divine authority and mortal humility. That's the beauty of it. We get to decide what we become next. As the enhanced beings disperse to their various realities and responsibilities, each carrying the understanding that transcendent power is most transcendent when it transcends the need to transcend everything else. A new chapter in cosmic history begins. Not an ending to the story of existence, but a recognition that existence is a story that chooses never to end. And somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, in the quiet moments between one possibility and the next, the universe itself seems to smile with the satisfaction of a student who has finally learned the most important lesson of all, that learning never stops, growth never concludes, and the best answers are always the ones that lead to better questions. What other divine what-ifs should we explore next? The narrator asks as reality settles into its new patterns of endless possibility. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the infinite potential of existence itself. Because in a multiverse where anything is possible, the only limitation is our willingness to keep growing.